Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. The security lights in an office building cast long shadows after hours. I've always found something eerily peaceful about these corporate spaces when they empty out. The hum of air conditioning units, the occasional blink of a standby light on dormant computers, the subtle scent of industrial cleaning products that replace the day's cologne and perfume. It was in one such building that I first encountered the case that still visits me in those moments between wakefulness and sleep. My name is Detective Morgan Reed. I specialize in cases that don't quite fit into neat categories, the ones that make veteran officers shift uncomfortably in their chairs, the ones that remain unsolved not because of a lack of evidence, but because the evidence doesn't make sense. The Westbrook Financial Building stands 23 stories tall in the business district, glass and steel reflecting the city lights, its lobby adorned with tasteful modern art that nobody really looks at. The security system was state-of-the-art, keycard access, biometric scanners for sensitive areas, and a meticulous digital log of everyone who entered and exited. Every visitor was photographed, every employee tracked. It was the kind of system designed to make insurance companies smile and potential thieves look elsewhere. It was just after midnight when Miguel Soto, the night janitor who had worked at Westbrook for 17 years, called the police. His voice on the 911 recording was calm but confused. "There's someone here who shouldn't be," he said softly. "I don't understand how he got in." When I arrived, the lobby was bathed in that particular fluorescent glow that makes everyone look slightly ill. Miguel stood by the security desk, his cleaning cart abandoned in the corner. He was a thin man with weathered hands and eyes that had seen too many late nights. The security guard, a young man named Derek, was reviewing footage on multiple screens, shaking his head slowly. "Tell me what happened," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the empty space. Miguel's fingers nervously twisted the cloth in his hands. "I was cleaning the 14th floor. It's mostly empty now, they're renovating next month, but I saw light coming from under one of the doors, office 1412. He paused, swallowing hard. "I thought maybe someone forgot to turn off their desk lamp, you know, but when I opened the door there was a man sitting at a desk." Derek, the security guard, interjected, "That's impossible. Nobody badged into that floor after hours. I've been checking the logs." I nodded, letting them continue. "He was just working," Miguel said, like it was the middle of the day. He had papers spread out, typing on a laptop, wearing a suit but no tie, like he belonged there. "Did he seem surprised to see you?" I asked. "That's the thing," Miguel said, his voice dropping lower. "He looked up at me like he was expecting me. He smiled, and when I asked who he was and how he got in, he just said, 'I never left.' Then he went back to his work like I wasn't even there." I felt that familiar chill, the one that tells me a case isn't going to follow the rules. And then I told him I needed to see his badge. He said he didn't have one, that he'd been working there since before the badge system was installed. I said I needed to call security, and he just nodded like he didn't care. Miguel took a deep breath. So I went back to the elevator, called down to Derek. When we went back up together, the office was empty. Derek's expression was a mixture of frustration and confusion. "The whole floor is locked down. Nobody in or out without a badge swipe. I've checked the cameras. There's no one coming into the building who matches his description, and no one leaving either." I asked to see the office in question. As we rode the elevator up to the 14th floor, I felt the weight of silence press against us. The doors opened to reveal a hallway of darkened offices, temporary plastic sheeting covering some of the doorways in preparation for the upcoming renovation. Office 1412 was unremarkable, a standard corporate space with a desk, computer, filing cabinet, and window overlooking the city. The desk was empty, no papers, no laptop, nothing to suggest anyone had been working there minutes earlier. "Show me the security footage of this room," I said. Back at the security desk, Derek pulled up the feed. The camera pointed directly at the door of 1412 showed Miguel approaching, opening the door and speaking to someone inside. The angle didn't capture the interior of the office. After a moment, Miguel backed away and headed for the elevator. Minutes later, he returned with Derek. They entered the office, looked around, then exited, their body language showing clear confusion. "Can you show me inside the office?" I asked. "There's no camera inside," Derek replied, "only in the hallways." I spent the next few hours reviewing all the footage from that day. Nobody had entered Office 1412. The previous tenant had moved out 3 weeks earlier. The next morning I returned with a team. We dusted for prints, checked for signs of forced entry, examined the ventilation system. Everything was in order, no evidence of anyone being there. Just as we were about to leave, one of my officers called me over to the desk. "Found something," he said, pointing to a drawer that had been overlooked. Inside was a single business card. No name, just the Westbrook Financial logo and a phone number. When I called it later, the line was disconnected. I spent days interviewing every employee who had access to the 14th floor. No one recognized the description of the man Miguel had seen. He was, by all accounts, a ghost, someone who existed in that brief moment between midnight and the arrival of security, and then disappeared into the building's shadows. A month later, as the renovation of the 14th floor began, one of the construction workers made a discovery. Behind a section of drywall that was being removed was an old desk calendar from 1989. The name scrawled across the top matched no employee records from that time. When they checked the spot where Office 1412 now stood, they found it had once been a different office, 1427, before the floor was reconfigured in the early 1990s. The calendar's final marked day was April 17, 1989. The note written on it simply read, "Final interview." I requested the employment records from that period. There was no record of anyone being hired on that date. In fact, there was a gap in the personnel files, a section that seemed to have been deliberately removed. The building's original security guard from that era was still alive, retired now, living in a small apartment across town. When I showed him a composite sketch based on Miguel's description, his hands began to shake. "That's him," the old guard said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's the man who came for the interview that day. I remember because it was after hours and I thought it was strange. He went up, but I never saw him come back down." He paused, looking away. The next day they told me there was no interview scheduled, that I must have been mistaken, but I know what I saw. I've reviewed thousands of hours of security footage since then. Occasionally, in the background of a frame, there's a figure that might match the description, always just out of focus, always turning away from the camera, always on the 14th floor, always after hours. The renovations have been completed now. Office 1412 is gone, replaced by an open floor plan with glass walls and modern furniture. But sometimes, late at night, the motion sensors on that floor trigger for no apparent reason. The security logs show no one entering. The cameras capture nothing but empty space. And sometimes Miguel swears he can hear the soft click of keyboard keys as he passes by, the sound of someone working late into the night. Someone who never leaves because perhaps they never arrived in the first place. I've kept the case file open, though my superiors have suggested more than once that I close it. There are more pressing matters, they say, more logical cases to solve. But I can't let go of the man who was never hired, the man who exists only in the space between security logs and witness testimony. Because sometimes the most disturbing cases aren't the ones with bloody evidence or clear motives. They're the ones that make you question the nature of reality itself, the ones that remind you that not everything that happens leaves a trace. Some things, some people, slip through the cracks of our carefully monitored world. And sometimes they never leave. Story 2, I remember the first time I walked into the Reynolds case. The station was quiet that morning, most detectives still nursing their coffee, the gentle hum of fluorescent lights overhead creating a cocoon of calm around my desk. Captain Mercer had placed a thin manila folder before me, his weathered fingers lingering on its edge before he walked away without a word. The new house was perfect, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, but every night she would find notes scattered throughout the rooms, messages scribbled on torn pieces of paper detailing her darkest thoughts, thoughts she'd never spoken aloud. This was how the file began, a statement from Eliza Reynolds, 34, recent divorcee who had purchased a modest 2-bedroom bungalow on Maple Street just 3 months prior. I ran my fingers along the edges of her photographs, not of the woman herself, but of the notes she had collected. 17 in total, each one preserved in clear evidence bags, the handwriting consistently small and precise, almost architectural in its formation. I sometimes wish I could disappear completely, just fade away until there's nothing left. I still dream about the accident sometimes. I can hear the brakes failing. What if everyone knew what really happened that night? As I drove to Maple Street that afternoon, the autumn light was fading, casting long shadows across neatly trimmed lawns. Eliza's house looked unremarkable: white siding, dark shutters, a small porch with a wooden swing moving almost imperceptibly in a light breeze. Nothing about it suggested the quiet psychological torment happening within. She opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been watching through the curtains. Eliza Reynolds was tall, with dark hair pulled back from a face that seemed perpetually tense, like someone expecting bad news at any moment. "You found another one this morning?" I asked after introducing myself. She nodded, her fingers working nervously at the sleeve of her cardigan, in the bathroom cabinet, behind my medications. Inside, the house was immaculate, almost too perfect. Everything aligned with precision: books arranged by height on shelves, throw pillows positioned at exact angles, not a single picture frame askew. The controlled environment of someone desperate to maintain order when everything else was spiraling. "I've changed the locks twice," she said, her voice so soft I had to lean in slightly to hear her. "I've installed a security system. I've checked every window, every possible entry point. No one has been in this house except me." I followed her to the kitchen, where she handed me the latest note, already sealed in a Ziploc bag on her own initiative. "I know you still have the locket, the one with his blood on it." The paper was the same as the others, torn from a standard composition notebook, the kind sold in every drugstore and supermarket across the country. The ink was blue, a ballpoint pen, nothing distinctive. "Ms. Reynolds," I said, taking a seat at her kitchen table. The chair creaked softly beneath me. "I need to ask you about the content of these messages." Her eyes met mine briefly before looking away, focusing on the gentle sway of tree branches visible through the window. They're just random thoughts. Random thoughts that happen to be yours, things you've actually thought but never said. Her fingers tightened around the mug of tea she wasn't drinking. Yes. And this locket the note mentions. A clock ticked somewhere in the house, marking 10 long seconds before she answered. There was an accident 5 years ago. I already knew this from my preliminary research. Her ex-husband had been driving. A young man on a motorcycle had died. No charges filed, ruled as unfortunate circumstances exacerbated by poor visibility and wet roads. I was wearing a locket that night, she continued, her voice taking on a hollow quality. During the impact, it caught some of his blood when the window shattered. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. And no one knows about this, not your ex-husband, not friends, not family. No one. I spent the next 3 hours in that house. I examined every door, every window, looking for signs of intrusion that previous officers might have missed. I checked the attic access, the crawl space beneath the house. Nothing suggested anyone had forced their way in. As daylight faded completely, I sat in Eliza's living room, watching her movements. The way she continuously straightened objects that were already aligned. The way she would sometimes stop and listen intently, as though hearing something beyond my perception. The notes began exactly 1 month after you moved in, I noted, reviewing the timeline. Always in different locations, never when you're watching, and they always reference thoughts or experiences only you could know. She nodded, her face partially obscured by shadow as she sat across from me. Ms. Reynolds, I'm going to suggest something that might seem unusual. The cushion beneath me was firm as I leaned forward. Would you allow me to stay here tonight to observe? Perhaps whoever is doing this might be deterred by my presence, or if not, I could catch them in the act. The request was unorthodox, but something about this case crawled under my skin in a way most didn't. After a moment of consideration, she agreed. Around midnight, Eliza retired to her bedroom. I positioned myself in the darkened living room, the house settling around me with occasional creaks and sighs. The hours passed slowly, marked only by the gentle ticking of the clock and the distant hum of the refrigerator. At 3:17 a.m. I heard it, soft footsteps padding down the hallway, not from the direction of Eliza's bedroom, but from the spare room she had shown me earlier, the room she used as a home office. I remained perfectly still, barely breathing, as a figure emerged into the living room. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, I could make out Eliza's silhouette. Her eyes were open but vacant, her movements fluid yet mechanical. In her hand was a small notebook and pen. I watched as she moved to the kitchen, tore out a page, wrote something on it with practiced precision, and then placed it inside a cookbook on the shelf. Then she returned to the hallway, her steps unhurried, vanishing back into the spare room. When I checked the cookbook, I found a new note. Sometimes I think the walls can hear me thinking. They're learning all my secrets. In the morning, Eliza had no recollection of writing the note. Her face drained of color when I showed it to her, placed beside the ones from her case file, the handwriting unmistakably identical. Parasomnia, the specialist explained 2 weeks later, after a sleep study confirmed my suspicions. A form of sleepwalking, but with complex behaviors. In Ms. Reynolds' case, likely triggered by the significant stress of her divorce and moving into a new home alone, compounded by unresolved trauma from the accident years ago. Eliza started treatment, therapy, medication, sleep monitoring. The notes stopped appearing, case closed, as they say. But sometimes I still think about that house on Maple Street, how its walls absorbed Eliza's unspoken confessions night after night, how the house became a silent confidant to secrets she couldn't acknowledge in waking life. And I wonder what my walls would say if they could write down what they hear when I'm sleeping. What secrets would they tell about me? Story 3. I still remember the first time I noticed something wasn't right at the Westlake Apartments. It was one of those autumn evenings when the air feels like chilled silk against your skin, and the setting sun paints everything in hues of amber and gold. I've been investigating missing persons cases for 15 years by then, but this one started differently, not with a desperate family member or a formal police report, but with a landlord's puzzled expression and a stack of uncashed checks. Raymond Hollies had owned the 12-unit building on Archer Street for almost 30 years. A meticulous man with wire-rimmed glasses that constantly slipped down his nose, he kept impeccable records of every tenant, every repair, every cent that passed through his hands. That's why the anomaly in Unit 7B troubled him so deeply. I thought it was vacant, he told me as we stood in the narrow hallway outside the apartment door. His voice was barely above a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might disturb something within. For 6 months I assumed no one was living here, then these started appearing. He held out a small stack of business envelopes, each containing a check for exactly $950, the monthly rent, no name, no return address, no memo line filled out, just the amount written in a peculiarly elegant script that seemed too formal for modern handwriting. "And you never saw anyone entering or leaving?" I asked, running my finger along the door frame, feeling the slight indentations where the wood had been worn smooth by years of use. "Never," Raymond replied, shifting his weight from one foot to another. The floorboards creaked beneath us, a sound amplified by the stillness of the corridor. But the security camera caught something unusual. The footage from the hallway camera was grainy and monochromatic, typical of budget security systems in older buildings. The timestamp read 3:17 a.m., that liminal hour when the world feels suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. The hallway was empty, shadows pooling in the corners where the dim emergency lighting couldn't reach. Then, without warning or explanation, the door to Unit 7B opened, just a few inches at first, then wider, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. No hand visible on the doorknob, no shadow of a person standing in the threshold, simply an empty doorway gaping like a silent mouth. A moment later, a white rectangle, unmistakably an envelope, slid out from beneath the door, settling on the hallway carpet. The door then closed with the same deliberate slowness with which it had opened. The entire sequence lasted less than 30 seconds. "It happens every month," Raymond whispered as we watched the footage for the third time. "First Monday, always at 3:17 in the morning. I've checked the other cameras. No one enters the building. No one leaves." I requested access to the apartment, of course. Standard procedure. Raymond fumbled with his master key ring, the metal clinking softly as his hands trembled slightly. When the lock finally turned, the door swung inward with a low, sustained creak that seemed to reach into some primal part of my brain. The apartment was empty, not vacant, empty. No furniture, no personal items, no signs of habitation. The walls were pristine, undecorated. The hardwood floors gleamed under our flashlight beams, not a scratch or scuff to suggest anyone had walked across them. The kitchen cabinets contained nothing, no dishes, no forgotten spices, no abandoned coffee mugs. The refrigerator hummed quietly, its interior spotless and bare. "This doesn't make sense," Raymond muttered, opening and closing closet doors that revealed nothing but more emptiness. "Someone's paying rent for this place. Someone's inside here at least once a month to slip those checks under the door." I moved toward the bathroom, the tile floor cold beneath my shoes. The shower curtain was drawn closed, the only thing in the apartment that wasn't in a state of perfect order. With a practiced motion born from years of investigating uncertain spaces, I pulled it aside quickly. The tub was dry, empty, immaculate. But something about the bathroom mirror caught my attention. Unlike the rest of the apartment, it wasn't completely clean. A faint smudge marked its surface, as if someone had pressed their palm against it and then tried to wipe away the evidence. Under the harsh bathroom light, I could almost make out the outline of fingers. I leaned closer, my own reflection drawing near to the smudge. And that's when I noticed something else, a faint, barely perceptible fog forming on the glass, expanding and contracting in a rhythm that matched neither my breathing nor Raymond's. "Mr. Hollies," I said quietly, not taking my eyes from the mirror, "when was the last time you actually entered this apartment before today?" His reflection appeared behind mine in the mirror as he joined me in the small bathroom. Must be almost 2 years ago, after the previous tenant moved out. Nice older gentleman, kept to himself. I remember he had a collection of antique watches, very particular about his privacy. "Do you remember his name?" Raymond's brow furrowed. "Lindemann, I think, or Linden. Something with an L. Funny thing is, I don't actually remember him moving out. Just realized one day I hadn't seen him in a while, and when I checked, the apartment seemed empty." I asked to see the rental records, and Raymond led me back to his office on the ground floor. The space was cramped but organized, with filing cabinets lining one wall and a desk overflowing with paperwork. A single window looked out onto the street, where evening was now settling into night. The folder for 7B was surprisingly thin. Inside was a rental application from 8 years ago, filled out in the same elegant handwriting as the checks. The name listed was Edward Linden, age 67 at the time of application. Former occupation, watchmaker. No emergency contacts, no references. Just a social security number and a previous address in another state. "Have you ever tried cashing these checks?" I asked, holding one up to the light. The paper was high quality, heavier than standard check stock. "Of course," Raymond nodded. "They always clear. The account belongs to an E. Linden at First National Bank. I called them once, but they wouldn't give me any information about the account holder. Privacy policies." I made a note to follow up with the bank, though I already suspected what I would find. An account set up years ago, with automatic payments or deposits ensuring it remained active. Over the next few weeks, I dug deeper into the mystery of apartment 7B. The social security number on the application belonged to an Edward Linden who, according to government records, had died 3 years ago. No death certificate had been filed locally, however. The previous address listed was a building that had been demolished a decade earlier. I interviewed other tenants in the building. Most knew nothing about Unit 7B, assuming like Raymond that it was vacant. One elderly woman remembered Edward Linden vaguely, tall, thin man, always wore a waistcoat, had the most remarkable blue eyes, but she couldn't recall the last time she'd seen him. As the investigation continued, I found myself drawn back to the apartment repeatedly. Each time it remained in the same state of pristine emptiness. No new smudges on the mirror, no evidence that anyone had entered or left, yet every month, like clockwork, a new check appeared under the door. I set up my own surveillance, hidden cameras with better resolution than the building's system, motion detectors that would alert my phone if anything moved inside the apartment, sound recorders sensitive enough to pick up a whisper. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. Then on the first Monday of the month at exactly 3:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with alerts. Multiple sensors triggered simultaneously. I was across town, but I drove to Westlake Apartments in record time, my headlights cutting through an unusually thick fog that had settled over the city. When I arrived, the hallway outside 7B was empty. A fresh envelope lay on the carpet. My equipment had detected motion, sound, changes in ambient temperature, but the video footage showed nothing. Just the door opening and closing on its own and the envelope sliding out. I collected the evidence, including the new check, and returned to my office to analyze everything. The sound recordings revealed something the video had missed, the faint, rhythmic ticking of what could only be a clock or watch, though no such object existed in the apartment, and beneath that, almost imperceptible, what sounded like breathing. The bank finally responded to my inquiries about the account. It had been opened 40 years ago and maintained with regular deposits ever since. The signature on the account matched the one on the checks perfectly, as if the same hand had been signing for 4 decades without the slightest variation or tremor. 2 months into the investigation, Raymond called me in a state of agitation. Something had changed in apartment 7B when I arrived. I found him standing in the center of the empty living room, pointing at the walls. "Look," he said, his voice unsteady. "Look closely." At first I saw nothing unusual. Then, as my eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the blinds, I noticed it, faint outlines on the walls where picture frames might once have hung. Ghostly rectangles, barely visible unless you knew to look for them. "These weren't here before," Raymond insisted. "I would have noticed." He was right. In my previous examinations of the apartment, the walls had been unmarked. Now they bore these subtle imprints, as if the room was slowly remembering what it used to contain. The bathroom mirror had changed too. The smudge had evolved into a more distinct handprint, the fingers longer and more clearly defined than before. And written in the condensation that shouldn't have existed in an uninhabited bathroom were 2 words, "Still here." I've been investigating missing persons long enough to know when a case has moved beyond conventional explanations. Edward Linden hadn't simply disappeared or died unreported. Something else was happening in apartment 7B, something that existed in the gray area between presence and absence. The checks continue to appear each month. Raymond continues to cash them, more out of habit now than any expectation of resolving the mystery. The apartment remains legally occupied by a tenant who might not exist in any way we understand existence. Sometimes, late at night, I find myself parked outside the Westlake Apartments, watching the window of Unit 7B mostly. It remains dark and still. But occasionally, just occasionally, I glimpse a flicker of movement behind the blinds, or what might be the silhouette of a tall, thin man standing motionless at the window. And from somewhere inside, if I listen very carefully, I can almost hear the faint, persistent ticking of watches that mark time for someone who may have stepped outside of it entirely. The case of the tenant who never paid, or rather, who always paid but never seemed to be there, remains open on my desk. Some mysteries, I've learned, aren't meant to be solved. They simply exist alongside us, separated by boundaries thinner than we care to admit. And sometimes, when I look in my own bathroom mirror, I find myself checking for handprints that shouldn't be there, and listening for the tick of watches I don't own. Story 4. I still remember the call that came in on a Tuesday evening as autumn rain tapped gently against the station windows. The kind of persistent drizzle that makes you want to stay indoors with a book and forget about the world outside. I was finishing paperwork, my desk lamp creating a small island of yellow light in the otherwise dim detective's office. The phone's ring cut through the quiet hum of the heating system. "Detective Mercer," I answered, my voice carrying the weight of 14 years on the force. "Something's wrong with my photograph," a woman said, her voice measured but unmistakably strained. "The people in it, they've moved." I've heard many strange claims in my career, but this one had a quality to it, a certain tension in her voice that made me pause rather than dismiss it outright. I asked her name. "Clara Winters," she replied. "I live at 1843 Maple Street." I wrote it down, the scratch of my pen against the notepad oddly comforting in its ordinariness. "Tell me about this photograph, Ms. Winters." The soft rustle of movement came through the line, followed by a slow, deliberate breath. "I bought it 2 weeks ago from Riverside Thrift, just an old black and white photo of a couple standing in front of a Victorian house. I liked the composition, the architecture. It was only $8. I continued noting details, the rhythm of writing helping me focus on what seemed on the surface to be the product of an overactive imagination or perhaps a lonely mind seeking attention. "When I first hung it in my living room, they were facing the house," Clara continued, her voice dropping slightly. "But last night I noticed they were turned toward me, their heads, their eyes, looking directly at me. The air in my office seemed to still, not because I believed her claim, but because of the certainty in her voice. This wasn't a prank call. Clara Winters genuinely believed what she was telling me. "Have you shown this to anyone else?" I asked. "My sister came over. She saw it too," Clara replied. She took a picture of it with her phone. When she looked at the image on her screen, the couple was facing the house again, but on my wall, they're still watching me. I should have politely ended the call, suggested she speak to someone else perhaps, but something in her tone, a restrained fear, not hysteria, resonated with me. 20 minutes later, I was parking outside her modest craftsman home on Maple Street. Clara Winters was about 40, with prematurely gray hair pulled back into a neat ponytail. Her home was immaculate, decorated with careful attention to detail, not the environment I typically associate with delusions or substance abuse. She led me to the living room without small talk. "There," she said, pointing to a framed photograph on the wall opposite her reading chair. The photograph was sepia-toned rather than black and white as she had described, roughly 8 × 10 inches. It showed a Victorian house with a wide porch, and indeed a couple stood in front. The man wore a 3-piece suit typical of the early 1900s, the woman a high-necked dress with her hair pinned up severely. They were facing forward, looking directly out from the photograph. "They weren't positioned like this when I bought it," Clara said quietly, standing several feet back from the wall. "They were looking at the house, their profiles visible, not their faces." I stepped closer, examining the photograph carefully. The couple's expressions were solemn, as was common in photography of that era. Nothing seemed particularly unusual about the image itself. "Do you have a receipt from the thrift store?" I asked. She nodded and left the room, returning moments later with a small paper slip. "Riverside Thrift, dated October 3rd. Vintage photograph, $8. "Would you mind if I take this down for a closer look?" I asked, gesturing to the frame. "Please," she said, maintaining her distance. I carefully removed it from the wall. The frame was simple, black wood, probably not original to the photograph. I turned it over and noticed something written in faded pencil on the back of the photograph. Holloway House, 1908. "Did you notice this writing?" I asked. Clara stepped forward, squinting at the faint script. "No, I didn't remove it from the frame when I bought it." I carefully extracted the photograph from the frame. The paper was old but well preserved, no obvious signs of tampering or recent modification. I was beginning to formulate a gentle way to explain that perhaps she had misremembered the original positioning when I noticed something else, a small envelope tucked into the back of the frame, hidden behind the photograph's backing. The envelope was yellowed with age, sealed, and had no writing on the exterior. I looked at Clara. "May I asked, holding up the envelope. She nodded, her eyes fixed on the small paper rectangle in my hands. Using my pocket knife, I carefully slit open the top of the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper, brittle with age. I delicately unfolded it to reveal handwriting in faded ink. "To whoever now possesses our image. We are watching, we have always been watching. The house holds what we seek. Return it to us, and we will look away once more. Elena and Thomas Holloway." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. Clara must have seen something change in my expression. "What is it?" she asked. I hesitated, then handed her the note. As she read it, her face paled slightly. "What do they want returned?" she whispered. "I don't know," I admitted, "but we might be able to find out who the Holloways were." Over the next few days, I found myself spending my off hours researching the Holloway family. Public records indicated that Thomas and Elena Holloway had owned a Victorian home at 217 Birch Street, less than half a mile from Clara's current residence. They had died within months of each other in 1910, leaving no children. The house had changed hands multiple times before being demolished in the 1960s to make way for a small apartment complex. What troubled me more was learning that Thomas Holloway had been investigated in connection with the disappearance of several valuable artifacts from the local museum where he worked as a curator. Nothing was ever proven, and the items, primarily small gold ornaments from an archaeological dig, were never recovered. When I shared this information with Clara, she seemed more puzzled than frightened. "But why would their photograph end up at a thrift store, and why would they think I have whatever they're looking for?" she asked as we sat in her kitchen, the photograph now stored face down in a drawer. "I'm not sure," I admitted. "Previous owners of this house, perhaps, or maybe it's just a strange coincidence." But I didn't believe in coincidences of this magnitude. That night, with Clara's permission, I brought in a colleague who specialized in art and photography authentication. He examined the photograph under specialized lighting and confirmed it was genuinely from the early 1900s, with no signs of modern manipulation. "Though there is something odd," he said, pointing to the couple's eyes. "The level of detail here is unusual for photography of this period, almost as if their eyes were added or enhanced later, but if so, it was done long ago and with remarkable skill." 3 days after my initial visit to Clara's home, she called me again, her voice tight with controlled panic. "The drawer where I put the photograph, it was locked, but now it's open. The photograph is back on the wall, and detective they're closer to the foreground now, like they've stepped forward." I drove to her house immediately. The photograph was indeed hanging exactly where it had been originally. But now the couple stood at what appeared to be the bottom of the porch steps, closer to the camera, their expressions unchanged but somehow more intense. That night, with Clara staying at her sister's house, I conducted a thorough search of her home. In the attic, behind a loose section of insulation, I found a small wooden box that looked decades old. Inside were 3 small gold figurines that matched the description of some of the items that had gone missing from the museum during Thomas Holloway's tenure. How they had ended up hidden in Clara's attic, I couldn't explain. The house had changed hands at least 6 times since being built in the 1940s, long after the Holloways had died. Someone must have hidden them there and never retrieved them. After reporting the found artifacts to the proper authorities, I returned to Clara's house with her the next morning. The photograph was still on the wall, but something had changed again. The couple was now standing where the photographer would have stood, their backs to the house, facing directly outward. Their expressions had changed, the severe, solemn look replaced by what I can only describe as quiet satisfaction. 2 days later, after the artifacts were officially logged into evidence by the museum's current curator, Clara called me one last time. "They're gone," she said simply. "Who's gone?" I asked, though I already knew. "The people in the photograph. It's just the house now. Empty porch, empty yard." I've kept in touch with Clara Winters in the months since then. The photograph still hangs in her living room, just an old image of a stately Victorian house with an empty porch. The museum determined that the recovered artifacts were indeed the missing pieces from the 1909 collection, though no one can explain how they ended up in Clara's attic. Sometimes I find myself wondering about Thomas and Eleanor Holloway. Were they watching all these years, somehow tied to their stolen treasures? Or was there a more logical explanation that continues to elude me? Clara insists she feels a sense of peace in her home now, but she's hung a small mirror opposite the photograph. "Just so I can check it without turning around," she told me with a nervous laugh. I don't tell her that each time I visit, I check it too. Story 5. I still remember the weight of the manila folder in my hands, thick with reports no one believed. The soft yellow light of my desk lamp cast long shadows across photographs that shouldn't exist of a place that apparently never did. The clock on my wall ticked steadily, a comforting metronome in a case that defied rhythm and reason. My name is Detective Marcus Holloway, and after 23 years with the Portland Police Department, I thought I'd seen everything. Until the Wilson case landed on my desk 3 months ago, a simple missing persons report that would lead me down a rabbit hole I still haven't found my way out of. The Wilsons, David and Rebecca, were a middle-aged couple from Seattle who had been driving back from a wedding in Boise when they disappeared. Their credit cards showed a last transaction at a gas station off Highway 20, and then nothing for 2 days. When they finally reappeared, they told a story so bizarre that the first officers thought they were suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning or some shared delusion. We spent the night in Evendale, David Wilson insisted when I first interviewed him. His voice was steady, his eyes clear. It's this little town about 30 miles east of the gas station. Picturesque place had a white church steeple, a main street with shops, a small hotel called the Wayfarer's Rest. Rebecca nodded as he spoke, occasionally filling in details. The woman who ran the hotel, Martha, I think she said her name was, made fresh cinnamon rolls for breakfast. I can still smell them. I remember nodding, jotting down notes in my worn leather notebook. The the scratch of my pen against paper the only sound in the interview room for several long moments. The details were so specific, so mundane, that they carried the unmistakable weight of truth. But Evendale doesn't exist. It's not on any map, not on Google Earth. There is no record of a town by that name ever existing in Oregon. Where the Wilsons claimed they had spent the night, satellite imagery shows only empty fields and a stretch of forest. "We have receipts," Rebecca said, sliding them across the table to me. The paper felt real between my fingers. A dinner at Emma's Diner, $24.36. A room at the Wayfarer's Rest, $89.99. Both listed an address on Main Street, Evendale, OR. The receipts were printed on thermal paper, the kind that fades over time. They looked authentic. I remember the coolness of the metal chair beneath me as I leaned back, studying the couple. They weren't the type to pull elaborate pranks. David was an accountant, Rebecca a school librarian. They had 2 grown children, a mortgage, and a golden retriever named Cooper. They were, by all accounts, thoroughly unremarkable people. "We just want to understand what happened," David said, the fluorescent lights overhead catching the silver in his hair. "We've tried to find it again, 3 times now. We take the same exit, follow the same road, but it's just not there anymore." That was the beginning. What should have been a quick report, possibly a referral for psychological evaluation, became an obsession. I couldn't let it go. The details were too specific, the receipts too real, the Wilsons too credible. I drove out there myself the following weekend. The highway stretched before me, a gray ribbon cutting through golden fields and patches of forest. I found the gas station where the Wilsons had last used their credit cards, a weathered place with buzzing fluorescent lights and a clerk who had worked there for 15 years. "Evendale," he repeated when I asked, his brow furrowing. "Never heard of it. Only towns around here are Juniper Ridge about 40 miles east and Pinecrest to the north." I followed the directions the Wilsons had given me anyway, turning off the highway onto a narrower county road. The asphalt was cracked in places, wildflowers pushing through the fractures. Fields stretched on either side, the occasional farmhouse visible in the distance. No town, no church steeple, no main street. I might have let it go then, filed it away as one of those inexplicable cases that occasionally cross a detective's desk. But then came the Hendersons a month later, then the Diaz family, and finally James Parkman, a long-haul trucker with no connection to any of the others. All of them described the same town, the same church with its white steeple, the same hotel with its floral wallpaper and creaking stairs, the same diner where Emma, described consistently as a woman in her 60s with silver hair always pinned in a bun, served the best apple pie any of them had ever tasted. The weird thing, James Parkman told me, his large hands wrapped around a paper coffee cup in another interview room, was how quiet it was. Pleasant, you know, but like too quiet, no cars passing through, no kids playing, just these nice folks going about their business. The tape recorder whirred softly as it captured our conversation, the red light a steady presence between us. "Did you notice anything else unusual?" I asked, keeping my voice even, non-judgmental. Parkman was silent for a long moment, the steam from his coffee rising between us like a spectral presence. "The people," he finally said, "they were all, I don't know how to describe it, like they were waiting for something or someone." He shifted in his seat, the chair creaking slightly. "And nobody had phones, not cell phones, not even landlines that I could see. I asked at the hotel desk if I could make a call, and Martha, that was her name, same as the Wilsons said, told me the lines were down." I've spent weeks now compiling statements, cross-referencing details. The descriptions match too perfectly to be coincidence or mass hallucination. The church steeple with its slight tilt to the left, the hotel's lobby with its grandfather clock that chimed 3 minutes late, the diner's cracked red vinyl booths and the bell above the door that rang with a distinctive tone, described by Rebecca Wilson as like the sound of two crystal glasses touching. Last week I found something in the county archives, a survey map from 1937 showing a small settlement exactly where my witnesses placed Evendale. The settlement was unnamed on the map, just a small cluster of planned buildings that apparently never materialized. Or did they? I'm driving out there again tomorrow. The weather forecast predicts fog in the morning, unusual for this time of year. Something pulls me back to that stretch of road, some instinct I've learned not to ignore after 2 decades of detective work. The Wilsons received another credit card statement yesterday. Among their regular charges was a new one, $24.36 at Emma's Diner, dated 3 days ago. They swear they haven't been back since their first experience. As I sit here in my dim office, organizing my notes for tomorrow's drive, I can't shake the feeling that Evendale is waiting. Not just for me, but for anyone who happens to take that particular turn off Highway 20 under just the right conditions. The road exists, the receipts exist, the memories exist. But the town shouldn't exist at all. And yet somewhere between what's real and what's possible, Evendale is there, quiet, waiting, with its white church steeple and its floral wallpaper and its apple pie that everyone describes as just like my grandmother used to make. I've been a detective long enough to know that sometimes the truth isn't about what you can prove. Sometimes it's about what you can't explain away. Tomorrow I'll drive that road again. I'll look for that turn. And maybe, just maybe, I'll finally find the town that doesn't exist. Or perhaps it will find me. The clock on my wall continues its steady ticking, counting down the hours until dawn, until fog, until answers. Or until deeper questions. Story 6. I remember the first time I heard them, the voices. It was a Tuesday evening in late October when the apartment seemed unusually quiet. The radiator had stopped its persistent hissing, and even the traffic outside my window had faded to a distant hum. I was drifting off to sleep when I heard it, my name, spoken softly, as if from somewhere inside the wall beside my bed. Lelena. Just that, just my name. I dismissed it as that strange auditory hallucination that sometimes occurs as you're falling asleep. But the next night it happened again, and the night after that, always at the same time, always the same whisper. Lelena. I've been a detective with the Boston Police Department for 12 years. I've worked homicide for 7 of those years. I know better than to ignore patterns, coincidences that aren't coincidences at all. By the 5th night, I wasn't just listening anymore. I was recording. The apartment building was constructed in 1927, one of those pre-war structures with thick plaster walls, ornate crown molding, and floors that creaked with every step. The real estate agent had called it character. I'd called it charm when I signed the lease 4 months ago. Now, in the darkness of my bedroom, I was calling it something else entirely. The building's history wasn't particularly remarkable. No gruesome murders, no disappearances, nothing that would explain the whispers that seemed to be calling specifically to me. The previous tenant had been an elderly woman who moved to Florida to live with her daughter. Before her, a young couple who upgraded to a house in the suburbs when they were expecting their first child. Normal people, normal lives. But the voices weren't normal, and they were getting clearer. By the second week, I could make out more than just my name. I could hear fragments of conversations, words and phrases that floated through the plaster. She doesn't know yet, found the notebook when she discovers. I pulled my case files closer, the weight of manila folders comforting in my hands. Cases I was working, nothing unusual. A convenience store robbery turned homicide, a domestic dispute that ended tragically. A cold case I'd reopened from 1986, nothing connected to my apartment, nothing connected to voices in walls. I began tapping on different sections of my bedroom wall, listening for hollow spots, areas where the sound changed. In the corner nearest my bed, the wall sounded different, emptier somehow. I pressed my ear against it, feeling the cool touch of plaster against my skin. The voices were clearer here, more distinct. Elena knows about the pages. I hadn't told anyone about the voices, not my partner at work, not my sister who called every Sunday, not even my therapist who I'd been seeing since the Markham case 3 years ago, the one that still visits me in dreams sometimes. But the voices knew what I was thinking. They knew what I was planning. I went to the hardware store the next morning. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I walked the aisles, my shoes squeaking against the polished concrete floor. I purchased a small hammer, a utility knife, and protective gloves. The cashier asked if I was doing some home improvements. I smiled and nodded, not mentioning that I was planning to tear apart my rental apartment's wall because I heard voices coming from inside it. That evening I stood before the wall, tools in hand, heart beating steadily in my chest. I'd placed a drop cloth on the floor to catch the debris. With methodical precision, I began to tap the wall with the hammer, listening for the change in sound that would indicate the hollow space I knew was there. When I found it, I carefully cut a small hole in the drywall with the utility knife. Cool air rushed out, carrying with it the faint scent of old paper and ink. I widened the hole, careful not to damage whatever might be hidden inside. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness beyond the wall, illuminating what appeared to be a small cavity. And there, stacked neatly, were pages, dozens of handwritten pages. I reached in and carefully removed them, the paper cool and slightly brittle against my fingertips. As I began to read, my breath caught in my throat. The handwriting was mine, unmistakably mine, but I had no memory of writing any of it. October 15, I've started hearing something in the apartment at night. It might be the pipes, but it sounds almost like whispering. The date was from 2 weeks before I moved in. October 20, the whispers are getting clearer. They're saying my name. Each page documented experiences I was having now, but dated months before I'd ever set foot in the building. November 8, I've decided to open the wall tomorrow. I need to know what's in there. That was tomorrow's date. The final page was different from the others. The handwriting was hastier, more urgent. If you're reading this, Elena, then you're me, and I'm you, and we're caught in something I don't understand. Don't go deeper into the wall. Board it up. Move out. The voices aren't coming from the wall. They're coming from you, from us, from every version of us who has lived in this apartment and heard the whispers. We keep making the same choices, finding the same pages, writing the same warnings. Break the cycle, please. I sat on the edge of my bed, the pages spread around me, my flashlight beam creating long shadows across the floor. The voices had stopped. The apartment was silent except for the sound of my breathing and the occasional creak of the floorboards settling. In my years as a detective, I've learned that evidence doesn't lie, but it can mislead. People misremember. They confuse timelines. They see patterns where none exist. But this, my own handwriting describing events that hadn't happened yet, or had already happened, or were happening now in some endless loop, this defied explanation. I gathered the pages and placed them on my nightstand. I picked up my phone to call my partner, my finger hovering over his name in my contacts. But what would I say? That I was being haunted by myself. That time wasn't working properly in my apartment. That I'd found my own journal from a future that hadn't happened yet. Instead, I did what detectives do. I looked for patterns. I spread the pages across my bed in chronological order. I noted discrepancies, similarities, anything that might give me some insight into what was happening. And slowly, a pattern emerged. Every account ended the same way. Find the pages, read the warning, ignore it, go deeper into the wall, and then nothing. The entries stopped until they began again with a new Elena hearing whispers for the first time. I stood up and walked back to the wall, to the hole I'd made. The darkness beyond seemed deeper now, more absolute. I shone my flashlight into it again, and this time I noticed something I'd missed before. The cavity extended farther back than I'd initially thought. It wasn't just a space between the walls, it was a narrow passage. Against every instinct, against the explicit warning from my own hand, I widened the hole until it was large enough to step through. The air inside was still and cold, carrying that same scent of paper and ink, but also something else, something older and mustier, like earth long undisturbed. I stepped through the opening, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness ahead. The passage was narrow but tall enough for me to stand upright. The walls were unfinished, just bare wooden studs and the backside of drywall. But as I moved deeper, the construction changed. The wood looked older, hand-hewn rather than machine-cut. The walls were no longer drywall, but plaster and lath. I found more pages scattered on the ground, some yellow with age, some white and fresh, all in my handwriting, all telling the same story with slight variations, all ending at the same point, the discovery of the passage. And then I heard it again, my name, but not from the walls this time, from somewhere ahead of me in the darkness. Elena. I should have turned back, I should have heeded my own warning, but the detective in me needed answers, needed to know what was at the end of this impossible passage that shouldn't exist in a building with clearly defined dimensions and neighboring apartments on either side. The passage ended at a door, old wooden, with a tarnished brass handle. I stood before it, listening. The whispers were louder here, a chorus of my own voice at different ages, different timelines, all calling to me. I placed my hand on the knob, feeling its cold metal against my skin. Beyond this door was the answer, the explanation for the voices, the pages, the impossible loop I found myself in. I turned the handle and opened the door. What I found on the other side wasn't a room or another passage or anything that could be easily described in terms of physical space. It was more like a tier in reality, a place where time folded back on itself, where causality broke down, and in that space were others like me. Dozens of Eleners, some younger, some older, all standing in a circle around a small wooden table. On the table was a notebook and a pen. They turned to look at me, and I recognized the expression on their faces, the same determination I felt, the same confusion, the same need for answers that had driven me to open the wall in the first place. One of them stepped forward, an Elena perhaps 10 years older than me, with strands of gray in her hair and lines around her eyes that I didn't yet have. "You didn't heed the warning," she said softly. "Would you have?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "No, none of us do. That's why we're all here." "What is this place?" I asked, my voice steady despite the impossibility of what I was seeing. "It's a fold in time," she explained. "A place where choices echo backward and forward. We all found the pages. We all opened the wall. We all ignored the warning. And we all end up here, writing new warnings that our past selves will ignore." She gestured to the notebook on the table. "Your turn now. Write the warning for the next Elena who moves into that apartment. Make it convincing. Make her believe it, even though we know she won't." I stepped forward, picked up the pen, and began to write. The words came easily, as if I'd written them countless times before. Perhaps I had. The old apartment had charm, character, and creaky floors, but every night she heard voices coming from the walls. I don't know how long I remained in that impossible space, writing warnings that would be ignored, speaking to versions of myself from different timelines. Time had no meaning there, but eventually I found myself back in my apartment, standing before a solid wall. No hole, no passage, just unbroken plaster. But on my nightstand were the pages, the evidence that what I'd experienced was real. And now I wait, listening for the whispers, wondering if somewhere in some other timeline, another Elena is just moving into this apartment, unaware of what the walls have in store for her. Sometimes late at night I think I hear her, and I whisper back, knowing she won't understand until it's too late. Elena. Story 7, she had never gone up to the attic. There was nothing but dust and cobwebs. But when her phone rang with a crackling voice whispering her name, she followed the sound. The call was coming from a phone buried beneath old clothes and forgotten toys, a phone that had been disconnected for years. I remember the first time I visited the Harmon house. It was late October, when the afternoon light turns golden and stretches shadows across worn hardwood floors. The air smelled of old books and that peculiar emptiness that lingers after someone has lived in a place for decades and then suddenly vanished. I stood in the foyer, the soft ticking of a grandfather clock my only company. Detective Mills had asked me to handle this one personally. I was the department's cold case specialist, and this case had gone particularly cold. 23 years of dust had settled over the disappearance of Elena Harmon. "The house has been untouched," Mills had said, passing me a thin folder with yellowing pages. Her daughter finally decided to sell, wanted one last look through everything first. The daughter, Catherine Harmon, now stood beside me, keys clutched in her hands so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. She was 47 now, but looked older, her face etched with the kind of weariness that comes from carrying an unanswered question for most of your life. "I was just 19 when she vanished," Catherine said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone said she'd run off, that she'd had enough of small-town life." I followed her through the living room, where family photographs still adorned the walls, frozen moments of a life interrupted. Catherine in a graduation cap, her mother's arm around her shoulders. A Christmas by a fireplace that now stood cold and empty. "I never believed it," Catherine continued, running her finger along a dusty shelf. "She would have said goodbye. She would have taken something with her." We made our way through the kitchen, where ceramic dishes were still stacked in cabinets, waiting for meals that would never be cooked. A single coffee mug sat in the sink, the remnants of what was likely Elena's last morning ritual dried into a dark circle at the bottom. "The police searched everywhere," I said, reviewing what I knew from the old case files. The house, the grounds, interviewed neighbors, colleagues. There was just nothing. Catherine nodded absently, her attention caught by something outside the window. The backyard stretched to an old oak tree, its branches now bare, reaching toward a sky heavy with clouds. That weekend was supposed to be special, she said. I was coming home from college. We were going to go through old photo albums, organize them together. Her voice caught. I called her the night before to confirm our plans. She sounded fine, happy even. We moved upstairs to Alina's bedroom, preserved like a museum exhibit. The bed was made, corners tucked with military precision. A novel lay on the nightstand, a bookmark still holding Alina's place halfway through. A cardigan hung over the back of a chair, as if she just stepped out and would return at any moment. Her car was still in the garage, I noted, more to myself than to Catherine. Her purse was found on the kitchen counter, wallet intact, no signs of forced entry. Catherine stood in the doorway, unwilling or unable to step fully into her mother's room. I've kept everything exactly as it was, she said. For years, I thought maybe she'd come back. After a while, I just couldn't bear to change anything. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as we continued our tour. Each room told the same story. A life suddenly paused, with no explanation, no goodbye, no closure. There's one place I've never checked, Catherine said suddenly, her voice changing. The attic. Mom used it for storage, but I never went up there after she disappeared. A strange tension filled the air between us. 23 years, and this corner of the house remained unexplored. Why not? I asked, keeping my tone neutral, though my investigator's instincts were immediately alert. Catherine looked away. I was always afraid of what I might find, and Mom, she was the only one who ever went up there. She said it was just full of dust and old junk. We stood at the foot of a narrow staircase, a pull cord dangling from a trapdoor in the ceiling. Catherine reached for it, then hesitated, her hand trembling slightly. I stepped forward. Let me. The door creaked open and a folding ladder descended. The smell of decades of accumulated dust wafted down, along with the mustiness of enclosed space. I climbed first, my flashlight piercing the gloom. Catherine followed, her breathing shallow and quick. The attic was exactly what one would expect, low ceiling, exposed beams, boxes stacked in corners. Old furniture draped with sheets created ghostly silhouettes. Light filtered through a small round window, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. I don't see anything unusual, I said, sweeping my light across the space. Catherine moved slowly among the boxes, running her fingers along their sealed tops. These are all labeled in Mom's handwriting. Christmas decorations, Catherine's baby clothes, photo albums. We worked our way methodically through the space, opening boxes, finding exactly what their labels promised. Nothing seemed out of place or significant. Then Catherine's phone rang, startling us both. The sound echoed strangely in the confined space. She pulled it from her pocket, frowned at the screen. Unknown number. She answered, put it to her ear. Her expression changed immediately, confusion, then shock, then something close to fear. Hello, she said, her voice suddenly small. Who is this? I watched as the color drained from her face. She lowered the phone, staring at me with wide eyes. It's just static, but I thought I heard. She shook her head. I thought I heard someone whisper my name. The phone rang again in her hand. Again she answered. Again that look of confused fear crossed her face. The sound, it's coming from somewhere up here, she whispered. We both stood perfectly still, listening. And then I heard it too, a faint, electronic ringing, muffled but unmistakable, coming from beneath a pile of old clothes in the corner. I moved toward it slowly, Catherine close behind me. Carefully, I moved aside moth-eaten sweaters and what looked like old Halloween costumes. The ringing grew louder. At the bottom of the pile was an old rotary phone, its black surface coated with dust except for a single, clear fingerprint. The cord ran to a wall jack I hadn't noticed before. "This isn't possible," Catherine whispered. "This line was disconnected years ago." I picked up the receiver, silence. Then a soft, crackling voice, neither male nor female, neither young nor old, whispered a single word. "Catherine." The line went dead in my hand. Catherine was now frantically moving boxes away from the wall where the phone jack was. "There was never a phone up here," she kept saying. "Never." Behind the boxes, we found what the house had been hiding for 23 years. A section of wall that didn't match the rest. Newer drywall, poorly finished, and painted a slightly different shade than its surroundings. Forensics would later confirm what we both knew in that moment. Eleanor Harmon had never left her house. She had never abandoned her daughter. She had been there all along, sealed behind that wall, inches away from the life that had continued without her. The man who had done this, Eleanor's boyfriend of only a few months, had died 5 years earlier in a car accident, taking his motives to his grave. But in his apartment, investigators found Eleanor's old address book with a single page torn out. And in his attic, they found a box of old clothes and a rotary phone exactly like the one in Eleanor's house. Some questions would never be answered, but as I sat with Catherine in the weeks that followed, watching as she finally laid her mother to rest, I found myself wondering about that phone call from nowhere. Science tells us that phones don't ring without electrical current, that disconnected lines stay silent, that the dead don't reach out to the living. But in my line of work, I've learned that some connections never truly break, that sometimes the truth finds a way to surface, even after decades of silence. And sometimes on quiet nights, I think about that phone in the attic, and I wonder who or what was really on the other end of the line. Story 8, the mansion had burned to the ground years ago, leaving nothing but ashes and charred remains. But as the developers began clearing the lot, they found rooms perfectly preserved, furniture untouched, photographs neatly placed on tables, and the worst part, a fresh meal sitting on the dining room table. I remember the day I first heard about the Harwick estate. It was mid-October, the kind of autumn afternoon where shadows grow long early and the air carries the faint scent of wood smoke and decay. The case file landed on my desk with a soft thud, the manila folder worn at the edges as if it had passed through many hands before reaching mine. "Detective Morris wants you on this one," said Captain Reynolds, his voice a low rumble in the quiet precinct. "Says it's right up your alley." I opened the folder, my fingers tracing the edge of a photograph clipped to the inside. The Harwick mansion, or what remained of it, stood like a blackened skeleton against a pale sky. The once grand Victorian home had been reduced to a charred frame, windows gaping like empty eye sockets. The fire had happened 5 years ago, claiming the life of its sole occupant, Eleanor Harwick, an elderly widow known for her reclusiveness. But now, developers clearing the property for new construction had discovered something impossible. The basement of the home, supposedly destroyed along with everything else, contained 3 rooms in perfect condition, untouched by fire, untouched by time, as if the flames had simply decided to pass over this part of the house, leaving it in a state of perfect suspension. I drove out to the property the next morning, the gravel driveway crunching softly beneath my tires. A light mist hung in the air, shrouding the blackened remains of the house in a gauzy veil. Yellow police tape fluttered in the breeze, marking off the area where workers had made their discovery. The foreman, a stocky man named Guthrie with weathered hands and tired eyes, met me at the edge of the property. 20 years in construction, he said, shaking his head slowly, and I've never seen anything like this. He led me across the debris-strewn yard, our footsteps muffled by the damp earth. A temporary staircase had been constructed, leading down into what would have been the basement of the original structure. "Watch your head," Guthrie warned as we descended. The air grew cooler with each step, carrying a faint smell of old books and furniture polish. At the bottom of the stairs, I paused, allowing my eyes to adjust to the dimness. What I saw made my skin prickle with an inexplicable chill. A perfectly preserved sitting room stretched before me, illuminated by the soft glow of battery-powered police lamps. A floral sofa faced a fireplace with ashes still in the grate, as if a fire had burned there recently. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes. A side table held a crystal decanter half filled with amber liquid. "This is impossible," I murmured, my voice sounding strangely muted in the underground space. "That's not all," Guthrie replied, gesturing for me to follow him. The adjacent room was a small study. A roll-top desk stood against one wall, its surface neat and organized. A fountain pen lay beside an open ledger, the ink in the final entry still appearing fresh. The date recorded was yesterday's. But it was the third room that truly defied explanation. A dining room complete with a mahogany table set for one. Fine china gleamed under the lamplight. A crystal wine glass contained dark red liquid, and on the plate a meal roast beef, potatoes, green beans that looked as if it had been placed there moments ago, steam still rising from its surface. I approached cautiously, my training at war with my senses. The scene before me couldn't exist. The house had burned down 5 years ago. The fire investigators had been thorough. Nothing had survived the blaze that claimed Eleanor Harwick's life. Yet here was evidence suggesting someone had been living in these perfectly preserved rooms. Someone who had prepared a meal just hours before we arrived. In the weeks that followed, I became consumed by the Harwick case. The forensic team found no footprints besides those of the construction workers who discovered the rooms. The food on the dining table was real. Lab tests confirmed it was fresh, prepared within hours of its discovery. The wine in the glass was a rare vintage from Eleanor Harwick's own collection, a bottle that should have been destroyed in the fire. I spent long evenings in the archives poring over the original fire investigation. The reports were clear. Eleanor Harwick had died in the blaze. Her remains had been identified through dental records. The fire had started in the kitchen, faulty wiring, and had consumed the entire structure. No part of the house had been spared. So how did these rooms exist, and who had prepared that meal? As I dug deeper into Eleanor's history, patterns began to emerge. She had been an architect in her younger years, specializing in unusual residential designs. After her husband's death 30 years prior, she had become increasingly reclusive, focusing on extensive renovations to the mansion. Neighbors reported seeing trucks delivering building materials late at night, hearing construction sounds at odd hours. One former handyman, now in his 80s, agreed to speak with me. We met at his small apartment on the outskirts of town, the walls lined with photographs from construction projects long completed. Mrs. Harwick had ideas, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Ideas about spaces that could exist outside of normal constraints. She talked about rooms that could remain untouched by the passage of time. He leaned forward, his roomy eyes holding mine. She was building something underneath that house, something she said would outlast everything else. I visited the county records office, searching for building permits, architectural plans, anything that might explain what Alina had constructed beneath her home. Most of the records were standard, but in a file dated just months before the fire, I found a single blueprint that made my blood run cold. It showed a series of rooms beneath the main house, connected by a narrow hallway. But the measurements were impossible. The dimensions suggested spaces that couldn't physically fit within the property's boundaries. Scrawled in the margin, in elegant handwriting, "When time folds, space follows." I returned to the preserved rooms with a new perspective, examining every detail with fresh eyes. In the study, I found a small leather journal tucked into a desk drawer. The entries span decades, the most recent dated just days before our discovery. The handwriting matched Alina's, but Alina Harwick had died 5 years ago. The final entry read, "The house remembers. When all else is gone, these rooms will remain suspended between what was and what could be. I have learned to fold time around me like a blanket, creating a pocket where I can exist outside its flow. The fire that will come cannot touch these spaces. I will continue my work here, even after the world believes me gone." As I closed the journal, I noticed something I had overlooked before. A door small and unassuming, partially hidden behind a bookcase in the sitting room. It was locked, but the key hung on a thin chain around the neck of a porcelain figurine on the mantelpiece. With a sense of foreboding, I unlocked the door. It opened onto a narrow staircase, leading further down into darkness. I never filed a complete report on what I found at the bottom of those stairs. Some truths are too difficult to explain in the language of police reports and evidence logs. Some discoveries reshape your understanding of reality in ways that can never be undone. The developers abandoned the project shortly after. The property remains empty, the entrance to the underground rooms sealed with concrete at my recommendation. But sometimes, on quiet nights when sleep eludes me, I find myself thinking about that meal, still sitting on the dining room table, steam rising from food that should have grown cold hours ago. I think about Alina Harwick and her impossible rooms, preserved in a pocket of folded time. And I wonder if somewhere beneath the ruins of that burned mansion, she's still there, continuing her work, rebuilding her house one impossible room at a time, setting her table each evening for a meal she will consume outside the flow of normal time. Because the house that rebuilt itself wasn't just defying the laws of nature. It was defying the very fabric of reality itself. Story 9, I remember the morning clearly. The soft pink light of dawn was just beginning to filter through the Venetian blinds of the Marigold Hotel's security office when my phone rang. 20 years as head of security had taught me that early morning calls rarely brought good news. "Mr. Reeves, it's Sophia from housekeeping." Her voice carried that particular tension I'd learned to recognize something wasn't right. "Room 418, you should come see this." The hallway carpet muffled my footsteps as I made my way to the 4th floor. Our hotel, nestled in the quieter part of downtown, had built its reputation on 3 pillars: exceptional service, meticulous record-keeping, and uncompromising security. In an industry where discretion is currency, the Marigold Hotel was considered the gold standard. Sophia stood outside room 418, her cleaning cart positioned like a barrier. She didn't speak, just gestured for me to enter first. The door yielded with the soft electronic hum of the master key. The room was immaculate, not just clean in the way housekeeping might leave it, but empty in a way that felt deliberate. The bed was made with hospital corners so precise they could cut paper. The bathroom gleamed, no toothbrush by the sink, no suitcase on the luggage rack, no charging cables forgotten beside the nightstand. "I haven't touched anything," Sophia whispered, though we were alone. It was like this when I opened the door. I moved deeper into the room, feeling the weight of something wrong settling between my shoulder blades. The closet stood empty, hangers perfectly aligned. The desk drawers contained only the hotel stationery, undisturbed. The safe in the closet was open and vacant. It was only when I approached the bed that I saw it, a single white sheet of hotel stationery placed precisely in the center of the crisp duvet. 4 words written in neat, unhurried cursive. "You'll never find me." I lifted the note carefully by its edges, though I knew instinctively that whoever left it wouldn't have been careless enough to leave fingerprints. The paper was hotel stock, the pen likely ours as well. Nothing distinct about the handwriting, steady, controlled, intentional. "Who was staying in this room?" I asked, still studying the note. Sophia consulted her tablet. "A Mr. James Wilson, checked in 3 days ago, paid for a week in advance with a corporate card, no special requests, hardly called for anything." Back in my office, I pulled up the registration information. James Wilson from Cincinnati, Ohio. A business traveler with Mercer Consulting. His digital check-in had been unremarkable. The ID scan showed a man in his mid-40s with nondescript features, brown hair, glasses, the kind of face that blends into a crowd moments after you look away. The credit card had cleared. The phone number went to voicemail with a generic greeting. The email address responded with an automatic out-of-office reply. I pulled up the security footage next. Our cameras covered every entrance, exit, and hallway. The elevators, too. I started with his check-in. Wilson had arrived at 4:17 p.m. on Tuesday. He wore a navy suit, carried a single rolling suitcase and a laptop bag, no remarkable features. He didn't chat with the receptionist. He didn't stop in the bar. He took the elevator directly to the 4th floor and disappeared into room 418. Over the next 3 days, the cameras showed him leaving each morning around 7:30 a.m., dressed in similar business attire. He would return in the evenings, sometimes with a takeout bag from nearby restaurants. He never used room service, never invited guests, never lingered in common areas. But something was off about the rhythm of his movements, something I couldn't quite place until I watched the footage for the 3rd time. His patterns were too consistent, too regular, like someone who knew they were being watched. Then came last night. Wilson returned at 8:45 p.m., takeout bag in hand as usual. The hallway camera showed him entering room 418, and that was it. The footage showed no one leaving that room until Sophia opened it this morning. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking beneath my weight. The Marigold had 18 cameras covering all exits. We required keycard access at all perimeter doors after 10 p.m. The stairwells were alarmed. The service elevators required staff credentials. How does someone vanish from a secure hotel without appearing on a single camera? I called the number Mercer Consulting had on file. After navigating an automated system, a puzzled HR representative informed me that they had no employee named James Wilson matching that description. The company credit card number, when I tried to trace it, led to a shell corporation that had been incorporated just 2 weeks ago. By afternoon, I had notified local police. The detective who arrived was a woman named Larson, with tired eyes and a methodical approach that mirrored my own. She took notes in a small, worn notebook, her handwriting tight and economical. "Any idea what he might have been running from?" she asked, flipping through Wilson's check-in information. "Or what he might have been running toward," I added. Together we went through the room again. Larson called in forensics, but I already knew they would find nothing. Whoever James Wilson was, he'd been deliberately careful. The forensics team confirmed my suspicions. The room was clean, not just tidy, forensically empty. No fingerprints except those belonging to housekeeping staff. No hairs in the shower drain. No DNA on the pillowcases. It was as if the room had never been occupied at all. "This level of cleanup takes knowledge," Larson said quietly. "Professional knowledge." 3 days later, the investigation stalled. Wilson's identity remained a ghost. The credit card company had no additional information on the shell corporation. The security footage revealed nothing new, no matter how many times I reviewed it. But on the 4th day after the disappearance, I received a plain envelope with no return address. Inside was a room key, one of ours, but not one that should have existed in our system. Attached was a small note card with the same neat handwriting. "Check the roof." The roof access of the Marigold was restricted to maintenance personnel. The door should have triggered an alarm if opened without authorization. But when I made my way up there, heart pounding against my ribs, the door opened silently. No alarm, no record in the security system. The roof was empty except for the HVAC equipment and the distant sounds of city traffic below. But taped to the inside of the door was a third note. "Some ghosts choose to vanish." I never discovered who James Wilson really was. The case file remains open but inactive. Sometimes on quiet nights when I'm alone in the security office, I still review the footage, searching for the moment I missed, the clue that would explain how someone could enter our hotel as one person and leave as no one at all. The Marigold Hotel still prides itself on excellent service, meticulous records, and high security. But I've learned that even the most secure walls sometimes hold secrets that choose never to be found. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder if he's watching me still, this guest who left no trace except in my memory, where he lingers like a shadow that falls across a room even after the light has gone. Story 10. In the dimly lit apartment, a sense of age and history lingered in the air. The heating system emitted a low groan and the pipes rattled softly, creating a familiar melody of the old building. Or so she thought until that fateful moment. A whisper, barely audible yet distinct, drifted through the vents, catching her attention. It wasn't the typical background noise of a neighbor's conversation. It was a soft, beckoning murmur, calling out to her by name. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, she leaned in closer, pressing her ear against the cool metal grate. A sudden rush of chilly air brushed past her cheek, followed by a playful whisper, "I know you're listening." Detective Morgan Shaw found herself standing in the heart of the deserted apartment, her gaze fixed on the rusted vent cover that had been forcibly removed from the wall. Around her, the forensics team meticulously worked, capturing every detail with their cameras. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had been absent for a week before the stench caught the attention of the building manager. What they uncovered within the ventilation system was beyond comprehension. Officer Patel, reading from his notes, mentioned Alina's reports of hearing voices through the vents, which the building management had dismissed as mere creaks of the old infrastructure. Kneeling by the vent, Shaw observed the deep scratch marks surrounding it, evidence of a desperate struggle from within. The victim, a beloved kindergarten teacher known for her nurturing spirit and thriving houseplants, had shown signs of increasing paranoia before her disappearance. Alina's sister, during an emotional interview, disclosed her siblings' fears of being watched and spoken to through the vents, a detail that now took on a chilling significance in Shaw's investigation. The meticulously arranged room, the untouched bed, the chair positioned beneath the vent, as though someone had been listening intently, all painted a haunting picture of a disturbed mind. Further examination revealed fibers matching Alina's clothing caught in the vent, along with an unidentified fingerprint on the inside of the cover. The recordings from Alina's phone, listened to in the solitude of Shaw's car amidst the pitter-patter of rain, unveiled a spine-tingling dialogue between Alina and an unseen presence, a voice so faint yet unmistakably eerie. Delving into the history of the building, Shaw uncovered a disturbing pattern of previous tenants vacating abruptly, citing strange noises and unsettling experiences. The superintendent, Harold Weber, raised suspicions with his evasive responses, particularly regarding the occupants of apartment 4. A hidden passage discovered in Alina's bathroom hinted at a secret realm within the walls, where someone had been living, observing, and whispering. A search of Weber's immaculate apartment unearthed a trove of incriminating evidence, meticulously catalogued audio recordings, and voyeuristic images of Alina and other tenants. Weber's detached demeanor and cryptic statements only deepened the mystery surrounding his sinister motives. The revelation of a storage unit filled with mementos from his victims solidified his role as a predator lurking within the building's structure. As the investigation unfolded, a harrowing tale of manipulation and obsession emerged, culminating in Weber's arrest and subsequent trial. The chilling revelation of Alina's final moments, sedated and led into the labyrinthine vents, shed light on the extent of Weber's twisted fantasies. The echoes of past victims' experiences echoed through the courtroom as justice was served, but Weber's ominous parting words lingered in Shaw's mind, a haunting reminder of the darkness that had permeated the building. Today, the once vacant apartment building stands as a silent witness to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. Despite efforts to erase the past, whispers still drift through the vents, and residents speak of ghostly voices and unexplained drafts. The legacy of fear and unease persists, a chilling reminder that some secrets are buried deep within the bones of the building, waiting to be heard once more in the dead of night. Story 11. The old wooden plank shifted under her weight, catching her attention with a subtle groan. Curiosity piqued. She knelt down, her fingers tracing the edges of the loose board. The floor whispered secrets beneath its surface, beckoning her to uncover its hidden truths. With gentle determination, she lifted the boards, revealing a cavernous darkness that lay hidden beneath her new home. Sarah Coleman peered into the abyss, a chill creeping up her spine as Detective Morgan Reed stood by her side, a silent sentinel in the shadows. The dim light of a flashlight pierced the darkness, unveiling a clandestine chamber filled with eerie artifacts. Photographs adorned the walls like silent sentinels, capturing moments of Sarah's life with unsettling precision. The air was thick with the weight of the unknown, with the realization that she had been watched, studied, and perhaps even coveted by a presence lurking in the shadows. The discovery of a mattress, a chair, and a weathered notebook filled with her name scrawled repeatedly sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Detective Reed's voice sliced through the silence, grounding Sarah in the stark reality of the situation. "Don't touch anything else," she cautioned, her tone a blend of calm authority and hidden concern. The truth unfurled like a sinister tapestry before them, weaving a tale of obsession and dark desires that had festered beneath the surface of Sarah's seemingly idyllic new beginning. The investigators descended upon the hidden chamber like ghosts in the night, their presence a stark reminder of the malevolent force that had haunted Sarah's every move. Forensic experts combed through the space, unearthing a trail of fingerprints that painted a chilling portrait of the man who had lurked in the shadows. Walter Green, the previous owner of the cottage, had left behind a legacy of obsession that transcended death itself. His fixation on Sarah had spanned years, his meticulous surveillance painting a portrait of a man consumed by a dark and twisted fantasy. As the pieces of the puzzle fell into place, Detective Reed uncovered a startling revelation that sent shivers down her spine. Walter's former co-worker revealed fragments of a disturbing narrative, hinting at plans that had never come to fruition, at desires that had remained unfulfilled. A key, a storage unit, and a chilling replica of Sarah's former life emerged from the shadows of Walter's twisted obsession, each piece a testament to the depths of his depravity. The calendar marked with a foreboding date loomed like a specter, a stark reminder of the darkness that had nearly engulfed Sarah's life. The truth unraveled like a thread, revealing Walter's troubled past, his descent into madness, and the insidious nature of his fixation on Sarah. The echoes of his delusions reverberated through the cold walls of the cottage, a haunting reminder of the fragility of safety and the hidden dangers that lurked in the shadows. Sarah made the difficult decision to leave, to sever ties with the haunted cottage and the memories it held captive. As she walked away, a sense of unease lingered, a silent specter of the darkness that had once threatened to consume her. And so the cottage passed into new hands, its secrets buried beneath fresh layers of paint and polished floorboards. Life moved on, the echoes of the past fading into whispers on the wind. But for those who knew the truth, the story of the hidden room beneath the floor remained a chilling testament to the fragile boundary between safety and darkness, between the known and the unknowable. Story 12. The apartment lay silent for months, a dormant space awaiting new life. The arrival of the new tenants brought with it a sense of anticipation, tinged with the dust of neglect and the echoes of forgotten memories. As they settled in, their expectations were modest, perhaps a few dusty corners to clear, some remnants of the past to uncover. Yet one door stood stubbornly closed, a barrier to the unknown. Locked from within, it guarded its secrets with an air of mystery. When the landlord finally broke the seal, the anticipation hung heavy in the air. The tenants braced themselves for the mundane, a stash of old coats, a pile of forgotten trinkets. But what they discovered within sent a shiver down their spines. The walls bore witness to a silent struggle, etched with deep, erratic lines of desperation clawed into the unforgiving wood. And in the dim corner, a relic of the past lay dormant, an antiquated flip phone, its screen still aglow with a single, haunting message left unread. Detective Morgan Shaw, seasoned in the shadows of human darkness, felt a chill crawl up her spine at the sight before her. It wasn't the crimson stains of violence or the stench of fear that unsettled her, but the silent plea etched into those walls, a silent scream of captivity and defiance. Turning to her partner, Officer Reed, she issued a command with a gravity that matched the weight of the unspoken tragedy unfolding before them. "We need forensics on site immediately," she said, her voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of unease. and pull up the records of the previous tenants. The cryptic message on the phone, a mere fragment of a sinister puzzle, bore a weight of accusation that hung heavy in the stagnant air. "I know what you did." The landlord, a man of trembling hands and evasive eyes, spoke of the previous tenant in hushed tones. A figure faded into the past, a young woman, withdrawn and unobtrusive, who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unpaid rent and unanswered questions. Forensics unraveled a web of secrets hidden within the walls, bloodstains mingling with the echoes of a life interrupted. The DNA of Emma Caldwell, the missing tenant, painted a portrait of struggle and sorrow, interwoven with the enigmatic presence of two other souls, one living, one long departed. The pieces of the puzzle refused to align, leading Shaw down a labyrinth of uncertainty and dread. As the investigation unfolded, a tapestry of intertwined lives began to unravel. Emma's once orderly abode revealed signs of a life abruptly halted, unopened mail, a cold coffee mug, a bed neatly made in anticipation of a tomorrow that never came. The whispers of her past conversations and the phantom calls of an unknown lover painted a portrait of a woman ensnared in a web of secrets and shadows. The threads of fate intertwined as surveillance footage captured the ghostly presence of a man in a baseball cap, his features obscured in deliberate shadow, trailing in Emma's wake like a specter. And when the fingerprints of a man long declared dead marked the threshold of her prison, the truth began to emerge from the darkness like a specter summoned from the depths of the past. The tendrils of Derek Mercer's twisted legacy extended beyond the confines of Emma's abode, reaching out to ensnare another lost soul, Lynette Porter, a ghost of the past haunting the present. Shaw's relentless pursuit of truth led her to a remote estate, a place of shadows and echoes, where the sins of the past clung to the walls like a stain that refused to fade. In the depths of that forsaken place, Lynette's hollow eyes bore witness to the horrors she had endured, imprisoned, starved, and forced to witness the agony of another soul trapped in the same suffocating darkness. Mercer's legacy of pain and control unfurled like a sinister tapestry, woven with the threads of suffering and despair. The manhunt that followed led Shaw down a path lined with shadows and whispers, a trail of breadcrumbs left by a phantom who reveled in the agony of others. Mercer's capture at the threshold of escape marked the end of a reign of terror, yet his calm demeanor belied the storm of madness that raged within. As the truth unfurled in the harsh light of justice, Mercer's facade crumbled, revealing the depths of his depravity and the intricate web of deceit he had spun to evade the consequences of his actions. The echoes of Emma's final plea reverberated through the courtroom, a silent testament to the horrors she had endured in the grip of a monster. The verdict, swift and damning, sealed Mercer's fate, a life sentence without reprieve, a fate entwined with the shadows he had sought to escape. And as the gavel fell, Shaw's eyes met his with a steely gaze, a silent promise of justice served and a legacy of darkness exposed to the light. In the aftermath of the trial, as the echoes of the past faded into memory, Lynette Porter stood tall in the face of her tormentor, her voice a beacon of resilience in a world tainted by shadows. And as she spoke her truth, a new chapter began, a chapter of healing and redemption, a testament to the strength that lies within the human spirit even in the darkest of nights. And so, the tale of Emma Caldwell and Derek Mercer faded into the annals of history, a cautionary tale of the shadows that lurk within the human heart and the light that shines even in the deepest darkness. And as Detective Shaw hung the door of Emma's closet in her office, a silent sentinel of a life lost, and a spirit unbroken, the whispers of the past faded into the gentle hum of a world at peace. Story 13. Renovations always had a way of revealing hidden treasures. Old newspapers, shattered trinkets, faded photographs, all whispering secrets of the past. Yet when Sarah and Michael delved beneath the floorboards of their newly acquired Victorian-era home, they unearthed more than they bargained for. Nestled beneath the time-worn wood lay a carefully folded letter, its paper fragile, its ink a ghost of words gone by. The message etched on the page was stark and haunting. Don't trust the one who knocked. Before the couple could make sense of this cryptic warning, 3 sharp knocks reverberated through the empty rooms, sending shivers down their spines. Sarah and Michael had been enchanted by the grandeur of the estate at an auction, drawn to its ornate details and storied past. Little did they know that their renovation project would unravel a tale of mystery and dread. Detective Alina Reed, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for the obscure, arrived at the scene with her partner. The floorboards lay open, revealing a shadowy void beneath. With gloved hands weathered by years of sifting through clues, Reed delicately retrieved the note, knowing that the couple's unwitting touch had tainted it with their presence. As Reed listened to Sarah and Michael recount the eerie knocking, she sensed genuine fear in their voices. Background checks on the couple turned up nothing suspicious, just a pair of newlyweds with solid reputations and stable lives. The house, however, bore a darker history. Once belonging to the Hargrove family, it had stood empty for years after the passing of its last inhabitant, Margaret Hargrove, an elderly widow with no known enemies or foul play surrounding her demise. Forensic analysis dated the mysterious note to 2 decades prior. The handwriting bore traces of desperation, hinting at fear or urgency. Margaret would have been in her twilight years then, living with her late husband, Franklin, an esteemed teacher and woodworker whose creations still lingered in the house. Franklin's former students recounted whispers of his growing paranoia in his final days, a paranoia that seemed linked to an unseen watcher, haunting his every move. Reed's investigation took her deep into the annals of the Hargrove family's past. Interviews with acquaintances unveiled a startling revelation. Franklin had been entangled in gambling debts owed to a shadowy figure known only as the Collector. This collector, Victor Mercer, was a lone shark who had vanished without a trace 2 decades ago. Margaret's sister, in a rare moment of clarity at a nursing home, whispered of Margaret's fear of the collector's relentless visits, driving her to consider selling the house, a plan thwarted by Franklin's stubborn refusal. With each layer peeled back, the truth emerged like a specter from the shadows. Beneath the house's foundation, cadaver dogs unearthed a grim secret, a male skeleton, bearing the marks of a violent end. Dental records confirmed it wasn't Franklin, but Victor Mercer, the elusive collector who had met a grisly fate at the hands of a desperate man pushed to the brink. Margaret's diaries, discovered in the attic, painted a harrowing picture of a woman living in the shadow of a terrible secret, haunted by the echoes of those 3 ominous knocks. Justice, though belated, was finally served as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the house's tragic history, sold it, leaving its halls to echo with unanswered questions. Rumors whispered of spectral knocks in the dead of night, a chilling reminder of the past that refused to rest. The note, now a relic of a dark chapter, remained in evidence storage, its warning echoing through the empty corridors. Don't trust the one who knocked. And in the silence of that vacant house, the secrets buried beneath the floorboards whispered of a tale never truly laid to rest, a mystery that lingered like a shadow in the night, waiting to be unraveled. Story 14, the aged envelope, its corners tinged with time, bore a fresh stamp, as if sent just moments before. With deliberate care, the detective unfolded it. Inside lay a solitary sheet of paper, its message hastily typed in a jagged, hurried script. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper exuded a faint dampness, a lingering scent of iron clinging to it. Only upon closer inspection did they notice the faint reddish streak along the lower edge. Not ink. Detective Sarah Morgan gingerly placed the letter into an evidence bag, her gloved hands moving with practiced expertise. The forensic team's findings confirmed her suspicions. The reddish mark was indeed human blood, matching the DNA from an unsolved murder that had plagued the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, bearing multiple stab wounds. Her laptop was missing, her notes strewn about, hinting that her death might be linked to an unfinished story. Despite exhaustive efforts, the case had grown cold, with leads dwindling. Now this cryptic letter had made its way to the police station, simply addressed to Homicide Division. Scant fingerprints adorned the paper and envelope, mere smudges hinting at gloved hands. The postmark, however, provided a vital clue after months of stagnation. Morgan summoned her team to the briefing room, the walls adorned with images of crime scenes, timelines, and suspect profiles that had led nowhere. Pinning the letter at the heart of the board, she declared, "This changes everything. Our perpetrator feels remorse." Detective James Chen, her longtime partner in the investigation, scrutinized the letter. "Or wants us to believe so," he countered. "The blood could be a theatrical ploy, a means of toying with us." The forensics team traced the unique typewriter impressions to a model long out of production. Uncommon, yet not unattainable, they embarked on a quest, reaching out to antique vendors and collectors across the region. As the inquiry gained momentum, they delved deeper into Rebecca's life. Her editor painted a picture of a relentless journalist dedicated to uncovering corruption. Her last assignment involved probing a wealthy family embroiled in local politics. With the patriarch's recent passing, a contentious will, and siblings at odds, tensions ran high. Interviews with Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, unveiled a shift in his demeanor since the letter's appearance. Furtive glances, a tremor in his hands. Rebecca spoke of being followed, he confessed. "I dismissed it as paranoia due to her investigation. I should have heeded her." While pursuing this new lead, a second letter materialized. Same typewriter, same blood. This time the message bore more weight. She uncovered too much about the family. The inheritance, what transpired with the old man. I never intended for it to escalate. The trail led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where the eldest son, Richard, possessed an array of vintage typewriters. His responses during interrogation appeared rehearsed, overly polished. A breakthrough emerged when microscopic fibers on the envelopes aligned with stationery exclusive to the family's youngest daughter, Alina. She disclosed Richard's request to borrow her stationery weeks prior. A search of Richard's residence unveiled a concealed chamber housing clippings about Rebecca, surveillance materials, and a vintage typewriter akin to the one used for the letters. Blood analysis confirmed it belonged to Rebecca. The unforeseen link between Richard and Michael surfaced through bank records detailing substantial transfers preceding Rebecca's demise. Confronted, Michael broke down. She unearthed evidence of Richard poisoning his father for a hastened inheritance, he confessed. "I informed Richard, hoping to deter her. I never envisioned he'd take her life." The puzzle neared completion when Alina shared a clandestine recording capturing Richard and Michael plotting against Rebecca. Richard's voice rang clear. She must be silenced permanently. In a bid to flee, Richard was apprehended. The prosecution's case hinged on the letters, the typewriter, financial transactions, and Alina's recording. Michael struck a plea bargain in exchange for his testimony. Throughout the trial, Richard maintained his innocence, blaming Michael for framing him. Yet the evidence spoke volumes. The jury swiftly rendered a guilty verdict after a mere day of deliberation. As Richard was led away, handcuffed Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's parents in the courtroom. No words could undo their loss, but the conviction offered a semblance of solace. The blood-stained letters lingered in evidence custody, a stark reminder that even the most meticulously orchestrated crimes leave traces, and that remorse, be it genuine or strategic, can unravel those who believe they've executed the perfect crime. The saga of Rebecca Warren metamorphosed into a pivotal case in detective lore, underscoring that breakthroughs sometimes arise not from advanced forensics, but from a weathered typewriter and the burden of guilt weighing on a killer's conscience. Story 15: The Enigma of Reflections. She cleared the mist from the mirror, fixating on her own reflection. Everything seemed normal, her face, her attire unchanged. Yet a sense of unease crept in as she gazed longer, a flicker at the edge of her vision, a motion not of her own making. When she turned away, her reflection lingered, motionless yet observant. This marked the beginning of the enigmatic tale of Rebecca Thorne, a tale that would baffle investigators and unsettle a community for years. Rebecca resided solo in a modest apartment within a serene suburban enclave. Known for her meticulous nature and reserved demeanor, she maintained a polite distance from others while being amicable with her neighbors. Her occupation as a data analyst for a mid-sized firm dictated her life, governed by routines and precision. Never did anyone suspect she would find herself entangled in one of the most perplexing criminal mysteries of the era. The saga commenced innocuously. Small items in Rebecca's abode seemed subtly rearranged, nothing missing, just shifted from their usual places. A coffee mug on a different shelf, books reordered, her toothbrush on the opposite side of the sink. Initially attributing these anomalies to absent-mindedness induced by long hours scrutinizing spreadsheets, Rebecca dismissed them. It wasn't until weeks of such disturbances passed that Rebecca contacted the authorities. Detective Marion Shaw received the initial report, deeming it more fitting for mental health services than law enforcement due to the absence of concrete evidence: no broken locks, no missing objects, no signs of forced entry. The essence of the complaint lay in a woman's unsettling feeling of wrongness within her own home. However, everything altered with the incident in the bathroom mirror. During her second interaction with the police, Rebecca vividly recounted how her reflection appeared to move independently, evoking a pervasive sense of being watched even in solitude. This time she presented proof, footage from a security camera she had personally installed, aimed at her front entrance. The footage unveiled a truth that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. It showed Rebecca departing for work in the morning, followed 20 minutes later by someone identical to her using a key to access her residence. Forensic scrutiny of the video confirmed no signs of manipulation or tampering. The individual entering mimicked Rebecca's every movement, attire, even carrying her distinct leather bag. Yet, according to verified timestamps from her workplace's security system, Rebecca had already swiped into her office miles away. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superior. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can mimic her with eerie accuracy." The investigation intensified, revealing only Rebecca's fingerprints throughout her home, devoid of foreign DNA. Neighbors attested to observing nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca's usual comings and goings. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, recalled greeting Rebecca upon her return one evening without receiving a response, an anomaly she found unusual but not alarming. Rebecca commenced documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations in her residence escalated. Unexplained disappearance of food from her refrigerator, searches on her computer she hadn't initiated, and most chillingly, discovering selfies on her phone that she had no recollection of snapping. In some images, her expression appeared subtly awry, the smile too broad, the eyes too intense. "I feel as though I'm losing my mind," Rebecca confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or perhaps someone is attempting to convince me so." Breakthrough arrived when investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. Rebecca's doppelganger only infiltrated during her absence for specific engagements like therapy sessions, yoga classes, or Sunday morning grocery runs, all pre-planned activities with predictable durations. "A detailed knowledge of your routine is at play here," Shaw elucidated. "This is not haphazard, it's focused surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist postulated they were confronting a fixation case, an individual fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, possibly aiming to supplant her entirely. Although rare, such cases had been documented in psychological literature. The culprit typically underwent a psychological rupture, fixating on a victim embodying traits they coveted: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The inquiry narrowed as Rebecca mentioned a former co-worker, Lily Winters, who had been terminated following a trajectory of escalating erratic behavior. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, often remarking on their similarities. Post-dismissal, she had dispatched a series of disconcerting emails to Rebecca, one of which read, "We could be the same person. Sometimes I feel more like you than you do." With a warrant secured, Detective Shaw and her team searched Lily's residence. What they uncovered escalated the case from disconcerting to chilling. A room in Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom, adorned with countless photos of Rebecca entering her home, socializing, engaging in activities captured unbeknownst to her. A wardrobe held exact duplicates of Rebecca's attire. Makeup mirroring Rebecca's preferred brands sat on a vanity, alongside meticulous notes on her behaviors, speech patterns, and daily routines. Most damning were the practice videos Lily had recorded herself imitating Rebecca's gait, gestures, expressions. The evolution was evident: initial attempts clumsy and overt, later iterations nearly indistinguishable from the authentic Rebecca. "She aspired to become me," Rebecca murmured upon viewing the evidence. "She wasn't merely copying me, she was erasing me." Forensic specialists unearthed sophisticated equipment for crafting key replicas and duplicating electronic access cards. Lily had maintained an intricate system for monitoring Rebecca's movements, including a calendar projecting her schedule in meticulous detail. Yet Lily's ultimate objective remained elusive. Journals uncovered in her residence contained rambling entries oscillating between first and third person, at times referring to Rebecca as me and her within the same passage. The final entry sent a chill through investigators. "Soon there will be only one of us. The stronger version will endure." When authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished, leaving behind signs of a hurried departure, drawers ajar, some technology missing. A nationwide alert was issued. Rebecca was relocated to a secure site under constant surveillance, as authorities monitored every location linked to her past existence for 3 weeks. But Lily never materialized. The narrative took a disquieting turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Rebecca was sighted entering the premises despite being on leave. Surveillance footage verified that a figure identical to Rebecca had accessed the building using a valid ID card, proceeding to her former workstation and rifling through her files before departing. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca remained secluded in protective custody. The truth became apparent: Lily hadn't fled, she had made her move. She now inhabited Rebecca's life, usurping her identity while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case remains open to this day. Lily Winters remains at large, while Rebecca Thorne chose not to reclaim her former existence, opting to forge a new identity in an undisclosed location. Detective Shaw preserves a photograph on her desk depicting two strikingly similar women, Rebecca Thorne and Lily Winters. At times, she scrutinizes their features, seeking disparities, the nuances that set them apart. The most unsettling aspect Shaw imparts to new recruits is not that someone can resemble or sound like you. It's the desire to assume your identity so fervently that they obliterate themselves in the process. Identity is not merely our outward facade, it's what we safeguard most zealously, and at times we fail to grasp its worth until someone endeavors to pilfer it. Story 16. The old house sat silent, untouched by life for what seemed like an eternity. Whispers from the neighbors spoke of a young woman who had vanished, leaving the place to gather dust and memories. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, they were met with a peculiar sight, a bedroom locked from within. With a creak and a push, the door swung open, revealing a room frozen in time. The air hung heavy with neglect, as if holding onto secrets long forgotten. The bed was neatly made, the mirror devoid of smudges. A lone candle stood on the desk, its wax a cascade of frozen tears, silently telling a tale of solitude and abandonment. Amongst the stillness, a notebook lay open, its pages filled with the delicate script of Elise Winters, a name lost in time. Detective Morgan sifted through the words, each stroke of the pen a whisper of a life interrupted. Elise, a paralegal entangled in a web of deceit, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a cryptic message etched in ink on the final page. "I know he's watching me tonight," the words echoed in the quiet room, a plea for someone to listen, to believe. As the dust settled, the truth began to unfurl like the petals of a long-forgotten flower. Elise, meticulous and dedicated, had stumbled upon a web of deception within the corridors of power. The room bore no signs of struggle, only a quiet defiance in the face of darkness. The flickering candle whispered of secrets buried deep, waiting to be unearthed. Forensic technicians danced their fingers over surfaces, seeking answers in the shadows. Fingerprint sets whispered of a past long gone, of a truth waiting to be revealed. Hidden beneath a loose floorboard, a key and a flash drive whispered of a hidden world, of secrets locked away in the heart of darkness. The truth unfurled like a delicate dance, revealing a tapestry of lies and deceit. Audio recordings spoke of manipulated data, of lives sacrificed for the sake of profit. Elise's voice, a beacon in the night, stood against the darkness, a testament to her courage and conviction. Through twists and turns, the path led to Vincent Harriman, a man cloaked in shadows, his hands stained with blood. The hidden passage whispered of his sins, of a darkness that lurked beneath the surface. Justice, a silent specter, waited patiently for its moment to strike. In a courtroom bathed in shadows, the truth came to light. Elise's mother stood tall, her voice a beacon of strength in the face of adversity. The room, a silent witness to the crimes that had transpired within its walls, stood as a testament to Elise's bravery and resolve. As the final echoes faded into the night, the house stood empty once more, a silent sentinel guarding the secrets buried within its walls. The light in the upstairs window flickered, a ghostly reminder of a life lost but not forgotten. In the stillness of the night, justice whispered its final decree, a promise kept in the shadows of a room frozen in time. Story 17. The motel was a bargain, its age showing in every creak and crack, a place meant for fleeting stays. The receptionist passed her the key with a peculiar glance. "Just avoid the final door on the left," he whispered cryptically. Intrigue tugged at her, stirring her curiosity. That evening, as she navigated the poorly illuminated corridor, she halted before it. The doorknob chilled her hand. The door blended in with the others until she pressed her ear against it. A faint breath whispered from the other side. Detective Morgan Reed blinked away drowsiness, slipping under the yellow tape sealing off the crime scene. The scent hit her first, an unmistakable metallic tang, a scent of blood. The carpet had absorbed the crimson liquid, transforming its design into a shadowy hue. The room was a paradox, a pristine bathroom, an untouched bed, and in between the ghastly sight. A young woman lay lifeless on the floor, her golden locks splayed out like a radiant halo. Her vacant eyes stared at the ceiling, frozen in a silent scream of surprise or dread. Reed knelt beside the victim, careful not to disturb the evidence markers scattered around. Third one this season, the forensic expert remarked, his tone devoid of emotion as he documented the scene. Same MO as the others. Reed nodded in solemn acknowledgement. The victim wore elegant attire, a stark contrast to the rundown motel setting. A designer purse lay open on the nightstand, contents undisturbed. This was no robbery, a different motive guided this murderer's hand. The motel manager lingered anxiously at the doorway, his complexion drained of color. She checked in alone, paid cash. I never imagined. His voice faltered. The maid discovered her during room service. Reed surveyed the room once more. No signs of forced entry, no defensive wounds on the victim. She had either welcomed her killer willingly or recognized them. Back at the precinct, Reed pinned up photos on the investigation board. 3 women, all bearing striking resemblances, all found in budget motels off the beaten path. Speculation swirled in the media. Rumors of a serial predator haunted the town. Autopsy results are in, Detective Hayes announced, dropping a file on Reed's desk. Cause of death, manual strangulation, no DNA under the victim's nails, no signs of sexual assault. Reed furrowed her brow. This is personal, not just random acts. Days blurred together as the case unfolded. Surveillance footage from the motel revealed nothing unusual. The victim, identified as Elaine Werner, was a meticulous financial analyst with no known adversaries. Her friends described her as cautious, detail-oriented, unlikely to choose such a shabby lodging voluntarily. A breakthrough came during Reed's interview with Werner's sister. She mentioned a man from her workplace, the sister shared, hands trembling around her coffee cup. Someone she was secretive about. I think he was married, Reed lined in. Did she give a name? She only referred to him as C, that's all she disclosed. The focus shifted to Werner's workplace. Coworkers praised her professionalism and privacy. None were aware of any personal relationships. However, a business card tucked inside Werner's desk calendar led Reed to Charles Emerson, Senior Vice President. Emerson exuded charm and composure when questioned, cooperative, concerned, keeping a safe distance. His alibi appeared airtight, dining with his wife and another couple, yet something in his gaze unsettled Reed. Did you have a relationship with Elaine Werner outside of work? Reed inquired casually. A flicker of unease passed over Emerson's face, fleeting enough to evade notice by most. Strictly professional. Later that week, forensics matched partial fingerprints from Werner's purse to Emerson. When confronted, his fa-a-dec cracked. We were involved, he confessed, but I ended it. She threatened to expose me to my wife. Was that enough reason to kill her? Reed probed. Emerson's demeanor hardened. I never set foot in that motel. However, hotel records told a contradictory tale. A charge on a corporate card linked to Emerson's company for the adjacent room. Investigation of that room unveiled a hidden camera in the shared vent, evidence mounted against him. Fibers from Emerson's distinctive suit matched those found on Werner's body. His DNA was present on a water glass in her room. Examination of his home computer revealed similar recordings of the previous victims. A pattern emerged. Emerson targeted women resembling his wife in her youth. He lured them to designated motels, always selecting the room beside the last door on the left. a room equipped with surveillance gear. After recording their encounters, he returned to erase the evidence, the women themselves. In the interrogation room, Emerson's composure shattered at last. "They threatened everything," he murmured. "My reputation, my marriage, my life." The trial was swift but riveting. 3 families witnessed justice unfold in the sterile courtroom. Emerson remained emotionless, maintaining the impassive faade that had served him well in the corporate realm. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without parole. As officers escorted him away, Reed locked eyes with him. For a fleeting moment, she glimpsed not his humanity, but its void, a chilling absence of empathy. The media dubbed it the last door on the left case. Psychologists delved into Emerson's psyche. True crime aficionados dissected every detail. Yet for Reed, the case lingered unresolved. Occasionally, wandering down motel corridors, she found herself tallying doors, pondering the enigmas concealed behind them. In the evidence vault, secluded from public gaze, 3 identical motel keys remained tagged and logged, tangible reminders that certain doors, once opened, can never be shut again. Story 18: Hidden Secrets of the Victorian House. In the dim light of the attic, tucked away beneath a worn and forgotten blanket, lay a discovery that would unravel the peaceful existence of Sarah and Michael. It was a porcelain doll, its delicate features frozen in time, with eyes as blue as the sky but devoid of life. Neither Sarah nor Michael could recall ever seeing it before, dismissing it as just another relic from a bygone era. As night descended and they retired to bed, a subtle shift in the air whispered of unseen forces at play. The weight of silence hung heavy, a prelude to the unknown, and when morning broke, the doll was no longer confined to the attic's shadows. It sat, a silent sentinel, at the foot of their bed. Sarah and Michael, drawn to the Victorian house's allure at an auction, had been enchanted by its intricate woodwork and enigmatic history. Little did they know that the whispers of past tragedies would soon intertwine with their own lives. Detective Rachel Winters, a seeker of truth in a world of shadows, received the call one crisp autumn morning. The scene she encountered in the master bedroom was a tableau of horror. The female victim, her limbs twisted unnaturally, eyes wide with terror, the male victim, frozen in a desperate attempt to flee. No trace of struggle tainted the pristine setting, no forced entry marred the tranquility. With a quiet determination, Detective Winters noted the deliberate arrangement of the bodies, akin to dolls posed for a macabre display. Each interview with neighbors unraveled a thread of unease, tales of shadows dancing behind curtains and ghostly laughter echoing through the night. The forensic team's meticulous search unearthed a haunting presence, microscopic fibers of vintage fabrics, lingering like whispers of the past. The absence of intruder DNA, the lack of fingerprints besides the victims, spoke of a spectral touch, a presence beyond the tangible. Delving into the house's history, Detective Winters uncovered a pattern of tragedy woven through time. 3 prior owners, each meeting mysterious ends, their stories shrouded in enigmatic details. A doll maker, a grieving father, a child lost to shadow. Each thread led back to the attic, to a secret buried in the walls. Old photographs whispered secrets long forgotten, capturing the doll maker's creations in frozen moments of time. Among them, a doll identical to the one haunting Sarah and Michael, its presence a harbinger of doom. Infrared scans revealed a trail of unseen handprints, a spectral guide from attic to tragedy-stricken bedroom. A distant relative's whispers breathed life into the shadows, tales of forbidden rituals and bound spirits. The doll maker, a master of his craft, had imbued his creations with more than mere porcelain and fabric. His dolls held secrets, echoes of lost souls seeking release. As the investigation reached a standstill, the doll's disappearance marked a turning point. Detective Winters, a witness to the unseen, found herself adrift in a sea of unanswered questions. The doll, a specter of the past, eluded capture, slipping through the cracks of reality. The house, a silent witness to untold secrets, changed hands once more, its legacy of tragedy echoing through the halls. The attic, a sanctuary of shadows, remained untouched by the new owners, a silent pact with the unknown. And as the years passed, whispers of the doll's laughter lingered in the night, a reminder of lives intertwined by fate. Detective Winters, her files sealed with secrets untold, departed into the shadows, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered mysteries. The doll, a phantom of the past, slipped beyond the grasp of mortal hands, a guardian of secrets lost to time. And in the stillness of the night, a small shadow danced behind attic windows, a whisper of a child's laughter in the wind, a legacy of the Victorian house's hidden secrets. Story 19. The old Polaroid held secrets tucked within its faded borders, a snapshot frozen in time, capturing a birthday celebration from yesteryear. Among the smiling faces and flickering candles, a subtle anomaly emerged, a shape lurking in the background, a mysterious figure standing just beyond the glow of the festivities. He lingered, half hidden in shadow, a silent observer unseen by the revelers. With each passing photo, he drew nearer, a spectral presence unnoticed yet unmistakable. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the forgotten collection while sorting through her mother's attic after the solemn farewell of a funeral. Within a simple cardboard box labeled Memories, she unearthed a trove of nostalgia in the form of aged photographs depicting cherished family gatherings. What should have been a comforting discovery transformed into the genesis of a haunting revelation. In the initial snapshot, the figure was a mere whisper on the edge of perception, a phantom silhouette lingering near the glass door during a childhood birthday celebration. Subsequent photos revealed his stealthy advancement, moving from the periphery to the heart of the gathering, standing ominously behind unsuspecting family members. Yet no one acknowledged his presence, as if he existed in a realm apart from their reality. Alarmed by the unsettling discovery, Sarah reached out to her father, her voice quivering as she questioned the identity of the enigmatic man haunting their family album. His response was a hesitant silence, followed by a sharp intake of breath, denying any knowledge of an outsider among the familiar faces captured in the frames. Seeking answers, Sarah sought the assistance of Detective Marcus Reed, who attentively examined the eerie progression of photos spread across his desk. As rain pattered against the windows, casting dancing shadows over the evidence, the seasoned detective scrutinized each image with a furrowed brow. Despite initial skepticism, a pattern emerged, a spectral figure weaving through the chronicle of family gatherings, drawing closer to the unsuspecting children with each frame. The investigation delved deeper, uncovering a chilling connection between the shadowy figure and a long-missing maintenance worker, Robert Keller. Dental records and enhanced images unveiled his dark legacy, a link to unsolved child abductions that had plagued the region decades ago. Keller's presence in the background of the family photos was a sinister revelation, exposing a hidden truth woven into the fabric of past celebrations. As authorities unearthed long-buried evidence at Keller's former residence, including personal belongings of missing children, the grim reality of his crimes came to light. DNA confirmed the identity of one of the vanished children, offering closure to grieving families haunted by decades of uncertainty. Alone in her apartment, Sarah reflected on the chilling saga that had unfolded through the innocuous frames of family photographs. The shadowy figure, once a spectral enigma in the background, had been unmasked as a malevolent force lurking within cherished memories. The unseen threat, captured in film but invisible to the naked eye, had finally been exposed, his reign of terror brought to a long overdue end. Gathering the damning photos, Sarah returned them to the confines of their box, now transformed into relics of a dark past. The hidden figures that moved through their celebrations undetected had been unveiled, their presence a stark reminder of the sinister forces that can linger in the shadows of memory, waiting to be revealed by the light of truth. Story 20. In the quiet of the night, a faint flicker danced across the baby monitor screen, catching the mother's attention like a ghostly whisper. Dismissing it as mere interference, she tried to shake off the uneasy feeling creeping up her spine. But then the audio crackled and a voice, soft and chilling, whispered, "SHHH, go back to sleep." Her heart skipped a beat as her blood turned to ice, a primal fear gripping her very core. With a racing heart, she dashed to her son's room, the air heavy with anticipation. The crib stood empty, a void where her precious child should have been. The room was unchanged, window closed, door locked tight. The only anomaly, the stuffed rabbit lying on the floor, its glassy eyes fixated on her, a silent witness to the unknown. Rebecca's screams pierced the night, raw and guttural, echoing through the house until her voice gave out. The neighbors, shaken by her cries, summoned help, and soon the nursery was filled with flashing lights and urgent voices. The authorities found her there, clutching the stuffed rabbit, lost in a world shattered by the disappearance of her 4-month-old son, Samuel. As the investigation unfolded, it seemed as though the very fabric of reality had been torn. No signs of forced entry, no alarms triggered, just a child snatched from his crib without a trace. Suspicion fell heavily on Rebecca, her history of seeking help for postpartum depression casting a shadow over her grief-stricken state. But then a glimmer of hope emerged from the darkness. Tiny fibers, foreign to the household, clung to the nursery windowsill, a clue leading to a world unseen. The discovery of climbing rope fibers hinted at a skilled intruder, a phantom scaling the walls in the dead of night. The focus shifted, casting a new shadow of doubt. Daniel, the absent husband, returned to a storm of accusations and secrets unearthed. His hands bore the marks of a hidden hobby, rock climbing, a pastime he used to escape the strains of his fractured marriage. As the threads of deceit unraveled, a web of betrayal emerged. Financial records painted a damning picture. Phone calls to unknown numbers whispered of hidden alliances. And then the revelation of a second family, a hidden life intertwined with lies and greed. But the true horror lay in the manipulation of technology. The baby monitor turned traitor. Hacked and twisted, its innocent signal twisted to deceive, luring Rebecca into a nightmare she could never have imagined. The truth lay hidden in a dark basement where a woman named Elaine cradled Samuel, a pawn in a game of lost love and shattered dreams. The past intertwined with the present, a tale of obsession and revenge spun from the threads of a broken heart. In the courtroom, the silence was deafening as the twisted plot unfolded. The baby monitor's whispered secrets laid bare, revealing a truth too dark to comprehend. Daniel's cough, a damning echo of guilt, sealed their fate. Justice was swift, a verdict rendered in the blink of an eye. Daniel and Elaine, architects of a twisted plot, sentenced to the full extent of the law. Rebecca and Samuel, scarred but resilient, sought solace in a new beginning, far from the shadows of the past. The baby monitor lay silent, a sentinel of the night, its truth a haunting echo in the darkness. Rebecca held onto the stuffed rabbit, a relic of a nightmare she could never forget, its glassy eyes a silent testament to the horrors that lurked in the shadows. And so the night whispered its secrets, a lullaby of mystery and betrayal as Samuel slept on, unaware of the darkness that once threatened to consume him. The monitor never lied, it bore witness to a truth stranger than fiction, a tale of love twisted into something unrecognizable. Story 21. The parcel arrived with no clues to its origin, no hint of its sender. Just a nondescript cardboard box touched by a hint of morning dew. It wasn't intended for her, the address matched, but the name did not. She should have dismissed it, should have left it untouched on the doorstep, but curiosity, that insistent whisper, won out in the end. With a sense of trepidation, she tore open the box, half expecting mundane contents like books or clothing. But what greeted her was far from ordinary. A VHS tape lay within, accompanied by a solitary sticky note that simply read, "Watch alone." Sarah Miller held the mysterious tape in her hands, feeling an inexplicable weight to it, as if it carried secrets too heavy to bear lightly. Her fingertips traced the familiar yet worn edges of the cassette, sensing the subtle imperfections etched into the plastic casing. The handwritten note bore the marks of urgency, each stroke conveying a message of urgency pressed onto the paper. As she stood in her suburban kitchen, the backdrop of everyday life continued its symphony, a distant dog's bark, the laughter of children playing nearby, the distant drone of a lawnmower slicing through the morning stillness. Unaware of the enigma that had just crossed her threshold, the world outside carried on in blissful ignorance. Sarah brought the package inside, placing it on her countertop, uncertainty creeping into her thoughts. The name on the box, Daniel Woodacre, meant nothing to her. In her 4 years of residence, she had never encountered anyone by that name. The previous occupants, the Johnsons, had long since departed to be closer to family. Intrigue mingled with unease as she eyed her dusty VCR, a relic of days past. There was something about the tape that beckoned to her, a mystery shrouded in worn plastic. Against her better judgment, Sarah inserted the tape into the machine. Static danced on the screen initially, gradually morphing into clarity. A dimly lit room materialized, illuminated by a solitary lamp. The camera angle was askew, lending an air of urgency to the scene. A man sat in a wooden chair, his features initially obscured by shadows. "My name is Daniel Woodacre." His voice resonated through the room, quiet yet unwavering. "If you're watching this, someone has found you. Which means they'll find me as well." Leaning forward, he revealed a face etched with weariness and vigilant sunken eyes, stubble tracing his jawline, hair in disarray. "I am not a killer, you must know that, but they've planted evidence against me, fingerprints, DNA, though I never laid a hand on her." The camera trembled as Daniel adjusted it, offering glimpses of the sparse surroundings, a barren room, scant furniture, the temporary refuge of a man ready to flee at a moment's notice. "They've fabricated everything. The police report will claim I knew her, that we argued, that witnesses heard us in dispute. None of it is true. I first saw Catherine Walsh's face when news of her murder broke." His voice faltered. "Lifeless, slain in her own home, and yet my DNA was inexplicably present at the crime scene." Detective Eliza Ramirez scrutinized the identical VHS tape resting on her desk, the fifth to surface, each bearing the same urgent message from the elusive Daniel Woodacre, a man officially accused in the murder of Catherine Walsh. A man who had vanished without a trace on the day her body was discovered. The Walsh case had initially seemed clear-cut, a young professional woman strangled in her own bedroom. No signs of forced entry. Evidence pointing squarely at Woodacre, his fingerprints already in the system from a minor offense years prior. Eyewitnesses reported sightings of a man matching his description near her residence in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. A straightforward conclusion until the tapes began to emerge. "The tapes complicate matters," Detective Ramirez intoned into her recorder, updating her case files. Whittaker is either orchestrating an elaborate ruse or unearthing something far more sinister. Her evidence board painted a grim tableau smiling photos of Catherine Walsh, chilling crime scene snapshots best left unexamined, maps pinpointing the delivery locations of the enigmatic packages, and at the center, the driver's license photo of Daniel Whittaker, his gaze seemingly beseeching. The investigation took a turn as Ramirez uncovered Walsh's involvement in a whistleblower case against PharmaCorp, a formidable pharmaceutical entity with government ties. Walsh had stumbled upon irregularities in their clinical trials, evidence of concealed side effects in a new drug fast-tracked for market release. She was set to testify, a former colleague murmured to Ramirez during an interview, eyes darting anxiously. Catherine possessed damning evidence, proof that higher-ups were aware of the issues but chose to bury them. The trial was imminent. Strange anomalies began to surface. The DNA evidence appeared too pristine, meticulously placed in locations incongruous with the crime. Testimonies about Whittaker seemed rehearsed, parroting identical phrases across various statements. Most disconcerting, surveillance footage from neighboring establishments inexplicably corrupted during the critical time frame surrounding the murder. 3 days after the tape, Sarah Miller received a second parcel. This time it held a trove of documents, clinical trial records, internal communications, email transcripts, all originating from PharmaCorp, all bearing Catherine Walsh's digital seal, all validating her suspicions. The focus of the investigation shifted. Ramirez connected with other tape recipients, threading together Whittaker's elusive trail of breadcrumbs. He had toiled in IT security for a PharmaCorp contractor, never crossing paths with Catherine, yet stumbling upon her name flagged in an anomalous security protocol he was not meant to access. They were monitoring her, Whittaker elucidated in a subsequent tape that surfaced. I witnessed the surveillance directives in the system. They knew she was amassing evidence. Then I found myself locked out of the network. The next day she was dead, and somehow I was framed as her killer. The breakthrough arrived when Sarah Miller discerned a detail on her copy of the tape that had eluded others, a reflection in a window behind Whittaker, revealing a series of storage units. Collaborating with Detective Ramirez, they pinpointed the precise location. Within Unit 217, they uncovered a trove of evidence: Whittaker's journal chronicling the conspiracy, Walsh's original files, and incriminating blueprints outlining Whittaker's framing, penned in the hand of PharmaCorp's head of security, a former law enforcer with access to evidence procedures. Justice was not meted out through a dramatic arrest, but through the accumulation of irrefutable evidence. 3 executives faced indictment. The security chief confessed, offering testimony against his superiors. The tainted drug was pulled from consideration. Daniel Whittaker emerged from hiding, a shadow of his former self, forever altered by his time as a fugitive. Charges against him were expunged, but the ordeal had left an indelible mark. Sarah Miller encountered him once as he retrieved his tape on her porch, the very spot where the enigmatic package had first landed. "Why me?" she inquired. "Why send it to my address?" He regarded her with weary eyes. "The algorithm chose you. I required individuals unconnected to me, or Catherine individuals beyond their scrutiny. Individuals who might still retain faith in their own judgment despite the damning reports against me." The erstwhile suspect and the inadvertent observer stood in contemplative silence, pondering the fragile boundary between justice and manufactured deceit. Eventually, Sarah broke the stillness. The incorrect address proved to be precisely the correct one. The VHS tapes found their way into evidence, tangible reminders that truth often arrives in unexpected guises, under unfamiliar aliases, awaiting the curious soul willing to delve within. Story 22. She crossed the threshold, dust dancing in the still air of the abandoned house. Years of neglect had left its mark, peeling walls, furniture draped in ghostly sheets. Each step felt like a frozen moment in time, a solitary figure in a forgotten world. But amidst the eerie stillness, a mystery lingered. The doors, they whispered secrets of their own. No matter which path she chose, each doorway led back to the same parlor, trapping her in a labyrinth of familiarity. The only escape, the way she came in. Yet when she turned, the entrance had vanished into thin air. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's lifeless form shifted the narrative of the Victorian house. Detective Sarah Lynn stood at the threshold, observing as shadows danced across the dim interior like spectral echoes. What was once a local oddity, a place where compasses spun aimlessly and whispers lingered in the air, now bore witness to a tragedy darker than folklore. The medical examiner's somber voice broke the silence, revealing the chilling truth: Morgan's demise. A quiet asphyxiation in the parlor, her serene expression a stark contrast to the grim reality. No signs of struggle, no trace of violence, only a haunting peace that unsettled even the most seasoned investigators. Questions hung heavy in the air, seeking answers among the shadows. Who had stumbled upon her silent vigil? A real estate agent, unsuspecting, mistaking her stillness for intrusion until closer inspection revealed the truth. The house, a relic of bygone disputes, a stage for forgotten dramas, now held the secrets of a young scholar drawn to its enigmatic allure. Morgan Pierce, a seeker of architectural anomalies, a student of spaces that defied norms. Her journal spoke of strange echoes, shifting doorways, and a dance with dimensions beyond comprehension. Her disappearance, a mystery intertwined with the secrets of the Victorians' walls. As Lynn delved deeper, a tale of fascination and obsession unfolded. Messages deleted, conversations veiled in mystery, a connection to Adam Reeves, an expert in the arcane arts of spatial manipulation. Reeves, a man haunted by the shadows of the past, a scholar entwined with Morgan's quest for truth. His alibi stood firm, a lecture miles away at the hour of her demise. Yet the whispers of the house carried a different tale, one of ancestral curses, of lives claimed by unseen forces. Eleanor Blackwood's legacy, a lineage marked by tranquil deaths in the parlor, a phenomenon known as the claiming. Hidden chambers revealed artifacts of ancient power, echoes of forgotten rituals, and a deity of liminal spaces. Morgan's equipment, a missing link in a chain of mysteries, tied her fate to a realm beyond mortal understanding. Reeves' tragic end mirrored hers, a key in hand leading to revelations unsought. His final message, a testament to the house's truth, a place where perception twists, reality bends, and escape becomes an illusion. The investigation remained open, a tale of spectral whispers and hidden truths. The condemned Victorian stood as a silent sentinel, its secrets buried within its walls. Rumors lingered of lights flickering in the night, of visitors lost to the house's embrace. Some whispered of a curse, others of enlightenment beyond mortal ken. The truth, a mirage in the shifting corridors of a house where all doors led back to the beginning, where time stood still and mysteries slept in the shadows. Story 23. In a quaint coffee shop, a man had his regular spot, a corner table where he sat in silence day after day. The barista recognized his face, but his name remained a mystery to all. Then one day he failed to show up. Concerned, the police investigated and found a wallet left behind at his usual seat. Inside the wallet, a driver's license revealed a photo, yet no name, no address, just emptiness where his identity should have been. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the case, her fingers tracing over the cold metal table as she scrutinized the security footage. The man, now known as John Doe, seemed unremarkable in appearance, average height, plain features, clad in a navy coat with a worn leather bag slung over his shoulder. His disappearance baffled all who saw him. for he had walked in, taken a seat, but had never departed. The footage replayed the mundane sequence of events, John entering the bustling coffee shop, ordering his usual black coffee, and settling at his familiar spot hidden by a leafy plant. He wrote in a notebook, occasionally pausing to sip his coffee and gaze out the window. Then the inexplicable moment arrived. He placed his wallet on the table, rose, and headed towards the restroom hallway. But he never returned. He never emerged through any exit. He simply vanished into thin air. Determined to unravel the mystery, Mercer requested a check of the bathroom footage, only to discover that John had never entered any restroom. No trace of him existed beyond his initial presence in the coffee shop. Back at the station, Mercer sifted through the contents of the abandoned wallet spread across her desk. Blank spaces filled the personal details where a name should have been. Credit cards bore unlinked numbers, and a loan business card displayed a faintly printed phone number that led to silence upon dialing. The barista, a witness to John's silent presence over the years, could offer little insight. He was always alone, always writing in that notebook, the barista recounted. The cryptic notebook left behind on the table was filled with coded text and enigmatic sketches of unfamiliar buildings. Mercer's team scoured the neighborhood with John's photo, yet no one recognized him. No missing person matched his description. Amidst the investigation, Mercer noticed a peculiar occurrence in the security footage each morning John entered the shop. The timestamp flickered momentarily, hinting at a subtle anomaly. Returning to the coffee shop, Mercer seated herself at John's table, her gaze drawn to an antique mirror hanging between the entrance and the restroom hallway, its ornate frame adorned with symbols akin to those in John's notebook. Questioning the shop owner about the mirror revealed its long-standing presence, untouched and immovable for years. Mercer, drawn to the mirror's mystique, found her reflection distorted, the glass emitting an unusual warmth upon touch. Forensics later uncovered a hidden compartment behind the mirror, housing identical wallets with blank details and a journal scribed by the same hand as John's notebook. The journal hinted at experiments in temporal displacement and identity transference, referencing window points and a gateway at the coffee shop. As peculiar incidents unfolded around the coffee shop, reports surfaced of reflections moving independently and sightings of John Doe where no physical presence existed. A breakthrough arrived when a former physicist, Margaret Keller, shed light on John's true identity as Daniel Weston, a brilliant physicist who delved into quantum mirror experiments before his inexplicable disappearance. Weston theorized about parallel realities and weak points allowing passage between them. Returning to the coffee shop, Mercer uncovered its history, built atop Weston's vanished laboratory. Late one night, scrutinizing security footage alone, Mercer beheld a startling sight reflected in the shattered mirror, two versions of Daniel Weston existing concurrently, watching each other. Rushing to the coffee shop, Mercer found the mirror shattered, with a final note amidst the debris warning against further pursuit. The enigma of the man who defied existence remains unresolved as the coffee shop closed, the building demolished, and Weston's fate left unknown. Mercer, haunted by the case, resigned from the force, her porch a sanctuary for frantic writing akin to Weston's. A fragment of the antique mirror adorns her wall, its surface sometimes rippling in unseen moments, a whispered echo of a past experiment now sealed away. Story 24. The tale of the new residents began innocently, with peeling wallpaper catching their attention. Little did they know, each layer peeled away would unveil a haunting narrative buried within the walls of their Victorian-era abode. As Michael and Sarah Klein embarked on the journey of uncovering the secrets hidden in their new home, they stumbled upon a name repeatedly scrawled in ink Alina Winters. The name echoed through the layers, etched with frantic strokes that hinted at a deeper mystery. Intrigued by this enigmatic discovery, they delved into the history of the house and its previous occupants. Their online search led them to a chilling revelation, a missing persons case from decades past, eerily resembling the woman who had sold them the house. Margaret Cavendish, with her silver-streaked dark hair and enigmatic demeanor, had passed on the property to them with an air of urgency, hinting at a hidden truth waiting to be unraveled. The journey into the past began with a simple water stain in the master bedroom, a seemingly innocent blemish that unraveled a series of hidden truths. Beneath the layers of time, they found themselves face to face with the ghostly presence of Alina Winters, her name a haunting refrain that beckoned them to uncover the secrets she had left behind. The walls whispered a tale of obsession and tragedy, written in the desperate script of a troubled soul. As Michael and Sarah delved deeper into the mystery, they uncovered a connection that transcended time, a missing woman from the past intertwined with the present in a web of deceit and longing. The resemblance between Alina and Margaret blurred the lines between reality and illusion, casting a shadow of doubt over their idyllic home. Their quest for answers led them down a path of obsession as they pieced together fragments of a puzzle long forgotten. The discovery of hidden identities and a tangled web of deceit only fueled their determination to uncover the truth behind the walls that bore witness to a dark secret. Forensic examinations and hidden compartments revealed a chilling truth, a tale of fractured identities, and a mind consumed by the shadows of the past. Alina Winters and Rebecca Eldridge emerged as intertwined figures in a tragedy that spanned decades, their lives bound by a twisted fate that left a mark on the very essence of the old Victorian house. As the investigation unfolded, the boundaries between reality and illusion blurred, revealing a truth more chilling than they could have imagined. The walls themselves became a testament to a shattered psyche, a confession etched in ink and hidden beneath layers of time. The revelation of Alina's remains buried beneath their very feet marked a turning point in their journey, as the past and present collided in a crescendo of truth and justice. The house that once held allure and charm now stood as a silent witness to a crime long buried but never forgotten. In the end, justice prevailed, but the echoes of the past lingered in the halls of the Victorian-era home, forever etched in the memories of those who dared to peel back the layers of time and confront the darkness that lay within. Story 25. In the twilight of its existence, the costume shop whispered of closure, its shelves shedding remnants of the past. A solitary figure, a woman named Catherine Reed, ventured through the aisles, her fingers dancing over forgotten relics. From the shadowed recesses, she plucked a mask, its features a delicate dance of beauty and unease. The cashier's voice faltered as she placed it upon the worn counter. "That's not ours," he murmured, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Perplexed, she sought a tag, finding none. With a nonchalant shrug, she bore the mask home, unaware of the silent specter now accompanying her. As the night wrapped its velvet cloak around the world, a soft rustling stirred Catherine from slumber. A whisper of fabric shifting in the darkness. Her eyes, heavy with sleep, sought the dresser where the mask had been left, only to find it absent. Instead, it perched upon her nightstand, its unseeing gaze fixed upon her form. Dawn broke timidly, casting tendrils of light into Catherine's home, a beacon for the concerned neighbor who crossed the threshold. The borrowed book forgotten, the neighbor stumbled upon a tableau that would linger in the shadows of investigators' minds for years to come. Catherine Reed, once vibrant in life, now lay still upon her bedroom floor, the mask vanished into the ether. Detective Morgan arrived, a silent sentinel amidst the cacophony of whispered voices and clicking shutters. No forced entry, no immediate answers. Her gaze, a keen blade slicing through the mundane, lingered on the minutiae that painted a picture of tragedy. A drawer ajar, a lipstick-stained glass, a woman robbed of her tomorrows. The medical examiner, a harbinger of grim truths, knelt beside the fallen Catherine. "Cause of death eludes me at first glance," he intoned, his voice a somber melody. No wounds, no struggle, only the echo of terror etched upon her visage. The detective, a shadow in the corner, knelt as well, whispering to the fallen, "Something unearthly claimed you, dear Catherine." In the labyrinth of Catherine's life, a thread emerged her expertise as an art appraiser, a seer of truths hidden in brushstrokes. Colleagues spoke of her discerning eye, her knack for unraveling secrets. Had this very talent woven her fate, leading her to a mask with a hunger for souls? The tapestry of enigma unfurled further as security footage whispered of the mask's origin. The cashier's confusion, the owner's denial, all pieces of a puzzle veiled in shadows. The detective's footsteps echoed through the hollowed shop, the owner's nervous stammer revealing a tale of masks and macabre lineage. Forensic alchemy unearthed microscopic whispers of the mask's touch upon Catherine's skin fibers of an otherworldly tapestry. Human hair entwined with an organic riddle, a conundrum unyielding to modern scrutiny. Each victim, a chapter in a saga of terror, each mask a harbinger of doom. A retired detective, a keeper of ancient secrets, shared a revelation symbols etched within the masks, a ritual of souls adrift. In the solace of dim light, he passed a file to his successor, a legacy of fear etched in faded ink. Within the sanctum of Catherine's dwelling, a journal whispered of her descent into the abyss. The mask's malevolent presence, the web of deaths it spun, each victim a puppet in a ghastly play. The entity, a phantom hungering for new vessels, its dance eternal and unforgiving. The detective wove a tapestry of evidence fiber, journal, ancient symbols, each strand a chord in a symphony of dread. The medical examiner's final revelation pierced the veil, cardiac arrest born of unbridled fear. What specter could evoke such terror that hearts falter in its wake? The tide of mystery surged as surveillance unveiled a shadow in the night, a figure shrouded in Catherine's form but bereft of her essence. A macabre masquerade, a dance of death in stolen skin. The mask, a vagabond of horror, vanished into the ether, only to resurface in a distant vintage shop. Its siren call lured a new bearer into its clutches, the cycle unbroken, the hunger unquenched. The detective, custodian of Catherine's truth, guards her journal as a talisman against the encroaching darkness. In the stillness of night, she feels the mask's gaze, a phantom touch upon her dreams. She locks her doors, secures her windows, and prays that the mask's hunger remains a whisper in the night, a nightmare deferred. For the mask, ancient and insatiable, waits in the shadows, a predator in search of prey. And when it finds its next victim, the dance of death will begin anew, a waltz of terror that spans centuries and knows no end. Story 26. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a mysterious key arrived in the mail, wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address. The homeowner, Sarah Miller, felt a strange familiarity with the worn brass key, despite not recognizing it. As she tried it in every lock she owned, none turned. Puzzled, she set it on the coffee table, and to her surprise, the old broken grandfather clock in the hallway chimed once, its sound hollow yet haunting. Sarah reported the strange occurrence to the authorities, setting in motion a chain of events that would unravel into a chilling criminal investigation. The responding officer initially dismissed her concerns as a simple mistake, but Sarah's unease persisted. Reluctantly, the officer took the key as evidence, unaware of the darkness it would unveil. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a keen intuition, received the case file and found the brass key sitting on his desk, its unassuming appearance belying the sinister secrets it held. Background checks on Sarah revealed no red flags, no trace of criminal activity. She appeared to be an innocent bystander caught in a web of malevolence. Forensic analysis yielded no fingerprints on the key except Sarah's, and the envelope offered no clues beyond a generic postmark. The key itself, a standard Schlage, seemed ordinary yet carried a weight of unknown history. It was when Detective Harmon ran the key's unique pattern through the department database that a chilling connection emerged. 7 years prior, an identical key pattern had been linked to a cold case involving a storage unit filled with evidence of unspeakable horrors: blood-stained carpet, cutting tools, and photographs of unconscious women. The original investigation had hit a dead end, but now, with the key as a lead, the case was reignited. As the investigation deepened, Sarah's anxiety grew, leading her to fortify her home with new locks and a security system. The unsettling question lingered: why had someone sent her this key? Detective Harmon delved into the past, uncovering a web of connections that led to a man named Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor with a dark history. Jenkins, a quiet and unassuming figure, had left a trail of mystery in his wake: gaps in his employment history, frequent relocations, and a hidden cabin that held a chilling secret. Beneath the floorboards of the cabin, a room concealed a collection of brass keys, each bearing a name and date. The keys unlocked a horrifying truth of additional victims, their remains buried behind the cabin. The manhunt for Jenkins intensified as the community reeled from the revelation of a predator living among them. Behavioral analysts painted a chilling picture of Jenkins, dubbing him the Keymaster, a name that struck fear into the hearts of all who heard it. The search for him spanned nationwide, culminating in a final confrontation in the wilderness. Jenkins, cornered and facing capture, chose to end his own life rather than face justice. His journal, found beside his body, detailed his crimes and held a chilling message for Sarah, revealing the twisted obsession he harbored for her. The investigation uncovered 32 victims, bringing closure to families but leaving a scar on the community that would never fully heal. Sarah, forever changed by the ordeal, never returned to her home, haunted by the knowledge of how close she had come to unimaginable horror. The grandfather clock's mysterious chime was revealed to be a sinister act of surveillance, a reminder of the darkness that had lurked in the shadows. As the case closed, a collection of brass keys sat in an evidence locker, silent witnesses to the lives lost at the hands of a predator. The investigation into Jenkins's psyche continued, a search for answers to prevent such atrocities in the future. And in the quiet of the night, the memory of the Keymaster lingered, a cautionary tale of the darkness that can hide behind an ordinary facade. Story 27. The aging apartment possessed its idiosyncrasies: pipes that groaned in the night, floorboards that whispered secrets of decades past. Yet the new tenant discerned a peculiar rhythm in the sounds that caressed her ears. The footsteps, unlike the sporadic creaks of settling wood, bore a deliberate cadence, a purposeful march from above. Curiosity mingled with trepidation in her heart as she dwelled on the enigma of those methodical footfalls echoing through the ceiling, tracing unseen paths with ghostly precision. One fateful night, emboldened by a whisper of courage, she grasped a broomstick and tapped the ceiling in a hesitant Morse code of inquiry. The world held its breath as the sound ceased, swallowed by an eerie hush that draped the room in shadows. Then, in defiance of logic, a solitary knock rippled through the silence from within the very heart of the ceiling itself. Sarah Coleman, the tenant in question, chose to bury the unsettling incident deep within the recesses of her mind. Rationalization spun webs of comfort around her thoughts. Perhaps the aged building was merely settling into its twilight years, or a curious creature had found solace within the attic's embrace. Yet, as the nights wove their tapestries of darkness, the phantom footsteps persisted, a haunting lullaby that danced above her head in the shroud of night. Detective Morris, a seeker of truths hidden in shadows, stumbled upon the apartment's enigma through a chance discovery made by a maintenance worker. A clandestine crawlspace, concealed behind a veil of drywall, whispered of secrets long kept in the building's bones. Illuminated by the worker's flashlight, the hidden chamber revealed a grim tableau, a sanctuary of solitude furnished with remnants of a life lived in obscurity. As the police descended upon the scene, Detective Morris and his partner, Detective Rivera, unraveled a tale woven in shadows and whispers. A notebook, its pages pregnant with Sarah's life meticulously chronicled, bore witness to the voyeuristic obsession that lurked within the walls. The gradual descent from sanity to madness, marked by cryptic symbols scrawled in desperation, painted a chilling portrait of a mind unhinged in pursuit of an elusive connection. Forensic revelations unveiled a labyrinthine network of passages interlacing the building's skeleton, a clandestine thoroughfare connecting disparate lives under the guise of anonymity. The threads of fate intertwined as past tenants whispered of unseen eyes that bore witness to their every move, a phantom presence that cast shadows in the sanctuary of their homes. The truth, a specter long kept at bay, materialized with the discovery of microscopic evidence, a whisper of blood spatter that bore the name of a vanished soul, Martin Weaver, lost to the annals of time. As the pieces of the puzzle coalesced, a sinister pattern emerged, tracing the footsteps of a recluse named Edward, architect of hidden realms within the walls, harbinger of darkness veiled in the cloak of silence. Edward's legacy unfurled like a tapestry of nightmares, his nomadic existence punctuated by the echoes of vanished souls who had crossed his path. Each apartment bore witness to his presence, a silent sentinel perched on the threshold of the unseen, weaving a tapestry of lives intertwined by fate's cruel design. In the heart of the wilderness, a cabin stood as a testament to Edward's macabre artistry, walls adorned with mementos of lives observed in silence. The missing pieces of the puzzle, buried beneath the earth's embrace, whispered of tragedies untold, of souls lost to the void in the pursuit of an inscrutable obsession. As the investigation veered towards a chilling denouement, the specter of Sarah's fate loomed large, a riddle unsolved in the tapestry of shadows. The whispers of unseen watchers lingered in the air, a haunting refrain that echoed through the hollows of her absence. The manhunt for Edward, the elusive architect of hidden realms, persists a shadow flitting on the periphery of reality, a specter woven into the fabric of the night. Detective Morris, haunted by the echoes of footsteps that danced above Sarah's head, finds solace in the darkness of his own solitude, listening for the echoes of a presence that defies explanation. In the silence of the night, as the world slumbers in the cradle of dreams, the enigma of Edward Mercer lingers, a phantom presence that traverses the threshold of reality, a whisper of darkness that tugs at the seams of sanity. And in the heart of it all, Sarah Coleman remains a ghostly enigma, a puzzle unsolved in the labyrinth of shadows that weave their dance above us all.